I gotta grab mine and do the
Well, first he
same.
sent my email to the Attorney General with a complaint.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Wednesday, February 18th, 2015, meeting of the Ways and Means Committee, Grand Traverse County. We'll start by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Wheelock. Absent. Max Bauer?
Here.
Krupa?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Crawford? Here. Klaus?
Here.
And Lathrop?
Here. Okay, now we're coming to the approval of minutes. Is there anybody that has a change or deletion for these minutes? I do. On page 3 of the minutes, item 2, it was Gary Howe of 926 Lincoln Street, Traverse City, who spoke, and not Tim Werner.
Oh.
So could I get a motion to change that?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
I will support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Now it's time for our first public comment, and Lana, would you help us out there?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Every meeting.
Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. And may I also add that we do have a sign-up sheet if we have quite a bit of public comment. There's a sign-up sheet on the podium if they could just print their name and the topic of discussion.
Okay, so I want you to all know that I want to have lots of time for public comment. You can do it now, or when the item of your concern comes up, we can give you a chance to do it then, and there's also a chance for it at the end of the meeting. Yes.
Greg Bird, Grand Traverse County Emergency Management Coordinator, 2600 Lafreniere Road, Traverse City. I didn't have time to get on the agenda, so it was suggested I give you a brief update from our nice little incident on Saturday, this past weekend. As you know, we had a horrible time with snow and sub-zero temperatures. It reached minus 29 was the official recorded temperature for Grand Traverse County outlying area. That day, February 14th, we had 301 911 calls for service. That's an 83% increase over a typical daily call. Out of that, 82 property damage accidents, 6 personal injury accidents. Luckily, we escaped the day without any deaths or serious injuries. 11 hit and run accidents and 42 other traffic incidents. Just because of the interest of time, we weren't able to pool and collectively assign all the fire and EMS incidents that happened that day. But total 911 calls just in a 24-hour period was 271 calls, which is a 67% increase for that day. I can tell you, I was on duty from about 6 a.m. to 20 or 11 o'clock that night, and there were times when I was talking to Mr. Benda and was considering calling Commissioner Max Bauer and asking for a declaration. I can tell you that out of the accidents that we had that day, there was a 120 car pileup on 113, just off of 37. There was another 9, maybe 20 car pileup because there was a bunch of them out on the Parkway and on 31. One time we had to request to shut down 31 to all traffic for an indefinite amount of time from 3 Mile Road to 72. We were able to mitigate that circumstance and only have that road closed for about an hour. We did plea to the public through social media and through media releases to please stay off the roads. They became that dangerous. Not only were they slippery and County Roads Commission couldn't keep up to them, but you simply could not see. It was complete and total whiteout blizzard-like conditions. One point in time, Sheriff's Department informed us that the visibility was less than 5 feet. And it literally was coming up on cars and couldn't see. So it got pretty bad. We did sustain South Airport Road was shut down for nearly 24 hours from Garfield Road to Town Line Road. I personally went out there Sunday, and there were drifts in probably exceeding 10 feet tall off the end of the runway. And I know that's hard to believe, but it happened. So we had some issues that came up, and just to let you know, we'll be coming forward hopefully with some agenda items in the future regarding the state of Michigan has no way to enforce keeping drivers off the road. And I'm going to look into that with our County Roads Commission and possibly upwards through County Commission to our state reps, but also through the Michigan Association of Emergency Managers. I know other states have snow emergency plans for the roadways that give their police enforcement powers to keep unnecessary people off the roads. And also, we had a shortage of road closed signs. No one ever knew that would happen. And so I'm working with Road Commission to identify some sources to have like an emergency trailer with a supplement amount of signs on it. So a good thing I can tell you that happened, and this is something that doesn't cost you a dime, is the Emergency Management Facebook page, when we plead for people to stay off the road, led to the postponement of West Central High's winter dance, which led to the postponement of St. Francis's Seussical musical, and led to the postponement of Kingsley's prom or dance that night, which also cascaded down to some local businesses voluntarily closing. We never asked for that, but that was a social media moment that really caused some postponements in the interest of safety of students and people to get them off the road. So that was kind of a quick down and dirty update on Saturday and Sunday. So.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir. Come on right up.
Good evening. Matthew Scheck, 306 West 9th Street, Traverse City, Michigan. My comments might fit in a little bit later, but I thought I'd mention them right now. It's the general state of the economy of the United States and maybe the relationship to what you guys do here on the county levels with funding. A lot of reports have been coming out about the economy is improving, the recession is over. One of the markers, though, that has a lot of us concerned has been that the federal authorities use is the marker is the job creation factor. The jobs have been created, I guess, something like 200,000 jobs per month, something like that. But, that doesn't really tell the whole story. Since the advent of Obamacare, there's a lot of employers out there that, from the figures that I've gathered, are hiring part-time. And that's not really a true indicator of any kind of economic recovery. And I just thought it'd be something that you guys might want to just keep in your frontal lobes when you consider, if you think we're all doing that well and you have extra funds that you want to pass around. It may not be as good as it some indicators, some factions of our government are indicating. I know, to me, that's one of the things that we should all be watching out for. Just the very fact that also that we have so much more money coming into the economy through quantitative easing, and I realize a lot of that is not really things that you guys consider here at county meetings, but it does affect the economy, and it does when money is out there circulating as fast as it is, and it's called money velocity. It's really a false indicator of improvement. It is not a true indicator of improvement in our economy. It's just something, again, like I thought you guys ought to be aware of. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to talk right now? Okay, then we're going back to the agenda now, and do we want to?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask that we move the new business A, presentation by Bert Gale regarding building codes contracting to special orders of business.
Support.
Support? Okay, there's a move by Commissioner Kropa. Second by Max Bauer to move special order of business, or move new business to special order of business, Bert Gale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, let's have a roll call then.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if we could have discussion, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I think this was posted as special order of business. We have staff that is here to make presentations on items that are before that. The staff has been here since early this morning. I think the staff should be given the opportunity to make their reports as they were on the agenda, and then we will take the new business as it is on the agenda. I think it's inappropriate to move this forward. It wasn't posted as a special order of business, and we have staff that have stayed over after their quitting time in order to make their presentations to us this evening.
Okay,
Now we can vote.
thank you, sir. Thank you for the advice, too, appreciate it.
Okay. Max Bauer?
David wants
Dave
to make
has
a
some
comment.
Oh, I'm
comments.
sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to add that really the only thing that would really impact staff would be the first item, the IT web redesign. And I think the others are all going to be here for the rest of it anyway, so.
I would like to add to that, I made this motion on the recommendation of our chairman, who did ask the person here for the special order of business. He didn't want to make the motion because he's the chair, so I did. I did discuss it and asked Don, who was here. We talked about the fact that you would be having a longer discussion than we thought, and I did ask the staff in consideration before I agreed with our chairman to make the motion to change the agenda. And also our administrator heard it as well. You just weren't here early, so you missed the conversation. This was also out of our chairman who asked for the presentation, out of his interest in having it placed on the agenda prior to the discussion of the soil erosion bid update. He felt that it would be more pertinent information to have before that rather than after that, especially for all of the citizens that came for public comment.
Okay, roll call.
Now we can. Max Bauer?
Yes.
Kropa?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Crawford? Yes. Klaus?
Yes.
Wheelock?
No.
Lathrop?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, now we come to the consent calendar. Is there anyone on the board that wants an item pulled off the consent calendar to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, we should read the consent calendar first, please.
Oh, okay. Let's have you read the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file, we have nothing on receive and file. B, approval, 1, 2015 hauler licenses.
Okay. Now, is there anyone who wants to remove anything from the consent calendar on the board? In the audience? Okay, then,
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent calendar as provided.
is there a second?
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do consent calendar.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on special order of business. Am I right? And we have Mr. Bert Gale from AGS. I've asked him to come, and this is an informational presentation. It's not a attempt to change anything. I just want to hear, he's been very successful at monitoring and managing these types of things, and I want to learn from his experience. So he's here to instruct us today, and he'll be available after the talk with some questions. Come on up, Bert.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. I will do it.
Thank you.
What am I missing? Oh, no, I did not get that. Okay. Yes, I did. Yep, thank you. The extra?
Good evening. My name is Bert Gale. I'm with Associated Government Services. We're a private firm that performs a lot of different types of services for different political subdivisions. We do building code and administration, we do soil erosion, we do ordinance enforcement, we do zoning administration, and I could name a lot more, but that's probably enough. We've been in business since 1988. With different types of communities. The profile of our business is on this page here, so I won't go completely all through it. I was asked initially to take a look at your soil erosion program. When I took a look at your soil erosion program, I discovered very quickly that the general fund had been supplementing that particular program with very large numbers. The large numbers for 2014 was over $52,000. The large number from 2013 was $56,000. And for 2012, I'm hoping it's a mistake, $152,000. Just to keep your soil erosion and sedimentation program running. I was asked to actually put a quote in for that. I did some quick mental calculations and came to the conclusion that it wasn't feasible for me to put a quote in for that, to increase the permit fees to what they need to be to support a program like that. I quite frankly don't want to be involved with. It would be a very large permit fee number. And the administration of soil erosion, quite honestly, is something that many communities, and I don't know anything about yours, so I'm not sure if you do this, is very time consuming, and most communities that I've run into don't do it properly. There's all kinds of rules and regulations, but quite frankly, after every rain event, we should be out there checking to make sure our soil erosion control measures are still functioning, and so on and so forth. So that's just one aspect of initially what I took a look at is the soil erosion portion of it. For us to be involved with the soil erosion program, we can do that, and quite honestly, we can eliminate, if not eliminate, come very close to eliminate that very large deficit that you guys are seeing with that program by combining your building department with the soil erosion department. We've already done that with your neighbor in Benzie County. We right now perform code administration and enforcement and soil erosion and sedimentation administration and enforcement in Benzie County. It's been working very well. The way to do that is, quite honestly, is you got to get efficient. The way that you get efficient is that you got to have folks that can do more than one thing. We do it with our building inspector. if our building inspector is going out on any particular job site to do a building inspection, why not do a soil erosion inspection while you're there? It just makes sense. That way you're not sending either that guy or a different guy out there separately. You're not involved with having another vehicle drive out there, and it goes on and on. So that's the way I see that you could, in this county, either through a private company like ours or in some other fashion, streamline that process. If you take a look at your building permit fees, I did an analysis of the building permit fees, and quite frankly, I gave you more information than I could possibly talk about in the time frame that I've been allotted. So some of the stuff that you're going to need to look through, and it'll be quite obvious as you look at it. If you take a look at the building permit fee comparisons, I asked for 5 different sampled projects to have your building department do a fee calculation for me. And that building permit fee comparison is on the very front page of this handout that I gave you. And I compared that to our fees. We use the State of Michigan State Construction Code table that was approved in April of 2013, along with our own formula. If you're wondering about what each sample is, in the following pages it'll tell you what each sample is. Number 1 is a 1,200 square foot new home. I believe number 2 is an addition, and so on and so forth. Item number 5 is a commercial building. Okay. If you take a look at those fees, you'll notice that there was one that, when I did the calculation, our fee was $21 higher on. That was on that, it was either an addition or on a remodel project. All the rest of them, we were substantially less, and you can see that on your building permit fee comparison. If you turn to the next page, you'll see trade fee comparisons. I did the analysis based on Grand Traverse County's trade permit applications. I just filled them out as if I was doing the project. And honestly, I was very conservative. I kept things simple. Many people, when they build homes, they're very extravagant. They put lots of extra things in their homes. I did not do that when I did this calculation. If you'll notice, for instance, example number 1, you'll see that the electrical, plumbing, and mechanical fee for us is identical. That's because we don't itemize for residential. We are under the philosophy that if we got a guy there and he's doing, for instance, a rough-in inspection, it really doesn't matter if the house is 1,200 square foot or 5,000 square foot. He's already there doing an inspection. So why are we charging these big, huge fees? So that's why you see the big difference in the permit fees for that example number 1. You'll see the difference on electrical is $110, the difference on plumbing was $73, and the difference on mechanical is $70 between the two calculations. The criteria that I use for these calculations are actually listed right there as to, how did I come up with that? So the criteria is on those pages as well. The last page is sample building permit fee calculation number 5. This is just simply a 5,000 square foot mercantile type building with type 2B construction. We don't need to talk about what type M and type building is and what kind of construction things are, because it doesn't really matter. Again, we use the State Construction Code table. You'll see that this is how we actually calculate our fee. Looks somewhat complicated, it is not. It's simply in our database. If somebody was to call me up and said, you know, I got a type M building, or a use group M building, type 2B construction, and it's 5,000 square feet, that's all I need to hear. I'll put it into the database and it pops out, tells me what fee is. You don't have to do, I was asked, how long will it take our people to do this calc? I said, well, less than an hour. Honestly, less than 5 minutes. Just got to put the data in, data comes out. So that really is my spiel. Now, we are, if you take a look at the last page of this handout right here, this is a jurisdictions list that we take care of already. You can see that it's kind of extensive. You'll notice Benzie County and Ionia County, we actually take care of both of those counties in their entireties. The rest of those are just townships, villages, or cities that we take care of within those other counties, as you're taking a look at. Yeah, I got a building inspector, and quite honestly, it is our philosophy. It says it's much easier to deal with a problem up front than it is to try to solve one when you're done. That's exactly the way we operate. Let's get it. Let's make sure everything is streamlined right up front. Then everything goes nice and smooth as we go. That really is what I have for you tonight. And I didn't know if Mr. Dave Benda remembered us, or if he remembered me, because quite honestly, when we were talking with Mr. Benda in Clinton County, he was talking with Gary Webster at the time. But I thought it might be interesting if you might want to take a look and see what Mr. Benda wrote for, maybe you don't remember, what he wrote as a recommendation for us.
Thank you.
Now, of course, this is dated. This is pretty old. We started working with Mr. Benda in, I believe, year 2000 in Clinton County. But he had written this glowing recommendation, is what I call it. Not only, I just want to call attention to the first paragraph. Not only did the county save over $150,000 a year, but the commissioners often remarked how few complaints they received. $150,000 a year, times that by 10 years. Or 20 years, whatever the length of time is that you work there. And it's ongoing for all of our clients. I'm really open for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much for your learned and experienced talk. Is there any questions? Commissioner Max Bauer.
Mr. Gale, when you work for your municipalities, do they provide you with support staff, or do you provide your own support staff? Do you provide your own office space? Does the municipality provide you office space for a fee or no charge? Or do the arrangements vary?
That's a great question. They vary. For the smaller communities like cities, villages, and townships, we actually handle that right through one of our offices. At a county level, we actually make an agreement with the county. We actually man we actually come in and with our own office staff, support staff, inspectors, and actually will be housed right here in the county building. Okay. The only thing we're looking for from the county is computers, desk, and a place to be, a place to function. But the county doesn't see any added expense, quite frankly, that you would see with your own employees. No fringe benefits, no cars, no insurances, these kinds of things.
Anybody else? Yes.
This is a question also to Dean. Dean, how much does our building department cost the county right now? I mean, do we actually pay to have our building department?
The building code department it's set up in a separate fund. It's an enterprise fund.
Right.
There's no county fund, there's no county appropriation. The permit fees are covering the cost of the operation, and it has over the years, it's accumulated a positive financial position. It's over, well, I think their cash balances are a little over 1.1 million, and the fund balance is probably about the same amount. So we've had a couple of good years. In previous years, we were accumulating some reserves because the building activity is not always consistent from one year to the next, but it used to be a department of the general fund, but I don't know how long it's been, over probably 12 or 15 years where it's been in an enterprise fund, and it's self-sustaining.
Okay, so, Mr. Webster, would you be able to do better than that for us?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Gale.
Mr. Gill? Okay.
The answer is absolutely. In the handout that you have, and I believe it was in the back of this handout, just take a look at your 2014 operations that I got. This is the numbers that I used. This is total department fees collected. I'm just going to round 1.6 million. Total department expenses is 1.1 million. So again, roughly $500,000 in, quite frankly, profits was made. That means that $500,000 came from people building in your community over and above what it cost you to operate. And that's, at least in my view, not a good way to bring people in that might want to do business in your community. Yes?
So you're saying the people's money that you'd be saving would be taxpayers' money
That's correct.
versus putting money in the county coffers?
Yep, it's user fees. It's whoever's coming in to obtain those permits to do that construction.
Go ahead, David.
I got a couple of things. One is, on the letter that he handed out to you, it's really important that you understand that they privatized building and zoning. They zoned at the county level for the general law townships in Clinton County. So they had a couple of municipalities that did their own zoning, but AGS took over the planning department and the building department, and that was the $150,000 savings that occurred. Now, that has to do with who was in place there at the time and what kind of a job they were doing. So I just want to put that caveat on this because it's not really an apples-to-apples comparison. And they did not do soil erosion. Soil erosion was done in the Drain Commissioner's Department. So that's one thing. The second thing is the fees in construction codes have, like he said, generated a $400,000 surplus last year. That was primarily because Bruce Remay did not hire additional staff. He increased the hours of existing staff and worked them pretty hard. And he's been trying to hold the line. We've also been talking about replacing some pretty ancient trucks, which he hasn't pulled the cord on that yet either. So there were some dollars that were supposed to have been spent out of that $400,000 that Bruce is too cheap to spend, frankly. And but his staff is getting to the point where the building activity in the county is rising, so that they're starting to feel that pressure, and he's having a hard time finding inspectors to do the work. So he's got to work the guys that he's got, and apparently they're working at a high functional level. Now, whether that translates into a reduction in the fees for a while, kind of like what we did in resource recovery. I mean, we found ourselves having every year some kind of event that occurred that kicked up the surplus, and then we knocked the fee way down to try and draw that balance down. And we did that 2 years ago, and we're still at that low level, and they've still got a surplus, and they're not drawing it down yet. So, I don't know if Bruce wants to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, come on up, Bruce.
Bruce Ramey, Director of Building Official for Grand Traverse County. Mr. Gale said that we made a $500,000 profit. That is not true. That money there's a lot of money in that fund that people have paid for permits that we have not performed inspections yet. So it's not profit. It's not, don't take it that way. It's not profit. That's money in there that people paid for services that we haven't provided yet. That's all I want to say.
Okay, Doctor.
Yeah, this would be for Dean or Dave. How many employees do we have in the building department there?
Bruce can answer that better than I can.
10? Okay. Who sets and controls your fees?
You do.
Okay.
The County Board of Commissioners has
So we'll
to
have complete
approve a fee
control over that.
schedule, would approve a fee schedule.
And what is done with any excess revenue you earn?
It's profit.
That's your profit?
It's profit.
Any other questions? Let's go, Commissioner Wheelock.
A couple questions. Number one, I noticed in all of your descriptions here, you talk about one inspection. I've worked a lot of job sites that require multiple inspections and repeat inspections. I'd be interested what the fee was to do a repeat inspection on those sites.
Okay,
Go ahead.
if it's a residential type trade inspection, on the application, it'll say new home, for instance, new residence. For a trade, that's a 3 inspection type fee. Typically, if it's electrical, you'll get a service, rough-in, and a final for that. Okay. Now, let's just say, for instance, to help answer your question, you didn't pass on inspection on one of those inspections, there would be a re-inspection fee that the person would have to pay. It would be $70 to send that inspector back out.
I have had the opportunity to work a couple sites over the years where inspector comes in and he says, well, this doesn't pass, you got to change this, and I'll be back on Thursday. He comes back on Thursday, you pay for another inspection fee, and that's fine, but he finds something else on the same site, and that always concerns me when we have to have them come back and they charge every time they come through the door.
It should concern you.
Yeah,
That means the first inspection you did wasn't a very good one.
Yeah, I will admit, I will say that has not happened on any job site that I've done in Grand Traverse County, but there are some other job sites that otherwise. The other thing I wanted to point out, and Bruce alluded to it a little bit, one of the things you have to remember about the surplus fees that are held right now, we have some very sizable projects in Grand Traverse County that have been permitted that are not fully constructed and haven't been inspected. So there's some significant inspections required yet on projects like the Indigo Hotel and, a couple of these large housing projects that we've approved here recently that no inspections have been done, but the fees have been collected, the permits have been bought.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Kropp, I remembered your name this time.
Thank you, Dave. My question is for Dave, actually, I think, or Dean. Just looking over the list of building permits, I'm a real rookie at this. I've been catching up and learning about soil erosion, but today's meeting has kind of thrown building permits into it. As I look at the list of building permits for the last 2 years, I do not see the Village of Kingsley or Garfield Township on here. I think I see all the other entities, although we may be missing a small one. I'm curious why the county doesn't issue building permits to all of the entities, and if that's maybe a way that we could look at adjusting things.
I believe Garfield Township does their own building inspections, and I'm not sure about the Village of Kingsley, but
Doesn't Five Lakes still do their own?
They're on here. Not the Township of Fife Lake, and then the Village of Kingsley is not on here yet, the Township of Paradise is. So I'm curious why some entities choose to not use the county building construction code office and other ones do. And is this a service we have to provide, or what? I guess I'm just trying to understand all of it. I understand soil erosion is mandated by, I believe, Part 91. I'm really trying to learn this stuff. I know this is probably backwards and forwards to you guys out there. But for building permits, I guess I'm a little bit confused.
Bruce would probably give you a better answer on this than I can, so I'm not even going to try. I'm going to basically hand it off to him.
My assumption would be that these other entities either have
The state construction code requires
members
that buildings be inspected under the state construction code and that the inspections be held, but I think jurisdictions have to accept the responsibility, right?
Yes, a jurisdiction could apply to the state to enforce their own building code, just like Garfield Township and Fife Lake. That's their option. Green Lake Township was like that. They lost it, they gave it to us. The city of Traverse City had their own building department. They gave it to us. So it's up to the individual township.
So we're kind of generous to let people give us their jobs that they
well,
don't want to fund?
To me, it makes sense to have one central location instead of builders going all over the place. But that's always an option.
Okay. So my question, I guess, would be more for, we share sheriff's deputies with townships, sharing costs that mutually benefits everybody in the county. Why can't we share in building codes and soil erosion codes? It's not necessarily about eliminating any of our staff. It's about sharing the costs. I guess I'm a little confused why 3 entities can choose not to be part of this. It's just a little bit odd to me from an outsider's point of view, I guess. I'm not in this code or in this line of work, so I know that there's a lot to it, and I don't mean to simplify it at all, but it just looks to me that we have partnerships with the townships and villages for other things, like law enforcement. Why don't we have partnerships for state-mandated construction codes and permitting?
Want me to field that?
Okay, if you can answer it, that'd be
Sure.
fine.
That'd be great, yeah.
Okay. Public Act 230 allows any public political subdivision to apply for the right to administer and enforce their own building codes program. The county at this point has responsibility for all the areas that hasn't done that. Okay, and Bruce knows who they are, I don't. Okay, and they don't have any obligation at all to do it. They can just sit back and let you do it. Okay, there's nothing that says any particular township is required to administer and enforce, so long as somebody's doing it, whether it be the state of Michigan's doing it, whether the county's doing it. So it all comes from Public Act 230. It's very well spelled out in there as to how this happens. Now, when somebody loses their authority for who knows what reason, there could be a whole array of reasons why that could happen, it will revert back to you, the county. Unless there's something wrong with the county, and then the state will take it over, and they will do it. They'll take it away from you. So that's the short answer.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Not that many years ago, Leelanau County, for example, got into some issues that they were not properly administering the building codes, and the state of Michigan actually came in and did theirs and billed it back to them. So that was a little bit pricey around the edges, but you know, the individual entities have the ability to choose. We don't get to choose whether or not we're going to do everybody's. We can't mandate it to them. They have that ability. The other point that I would make would be that if they choose not to do it, the county's responsible for that. But we have to remember again, like Ron mentioned earlier, this is an enterprise fund. We are putting no general fund dollars into the building code inspections. Soil erosion, on the other hand, is a little different in that Part 92 requires the county to be responsible for that. Now, stormwater, on the other hand, is the responsibility of the townships. It's not the responsibility of the county. But Part 92 requires that the county be responsible for soil erosion. And that's the only portion of general fund monies that we put into this building and soil erosion department, is a portion of the costs for the general fund, or for the soil erosion inspections. We pay nothing toward building inspections, nothing toward electrical, mechanical, or plumbing inspections.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Max Bauer?
Mr. Gale, your inspectors that are cross-trained, are all of your inspectors cross-trained in soil erosion, or just certain ones?
Just certain ones.
Okay.
Yes.
So, for instance, a plumbing inspector may not necessarily be cross-trained in soil erosion?
We only cross-train our building inspectors.
Just your building inspectors?
And the reason for that is that he's the guy out there when they're doing footings. He's the guy out there when it's foundations.
So basically, you're doing what makes sense?
That's how we're efficient. That's how we can do what we do for the cost that we do it.
Okay, thank you. And to Commissioner Wheelock's comment, I do not, this has been my objection since our budget discussions last year. I do not believe that it is my job to pay for soil erosion inspections for Hotel Indigo. I do not believe if I want to add a garage in my backyard that it is my next door neighbor's tax dollars that ought to supplement the cost of my soil erosion permit to put a garage in my backyard. I do not believe that general fund dollars ought to be used to subsidize soil erosion, period. And how we go about fixing that is certainly a board decision. But that's my 2 cents. And if this is an excellent time to have this conversation. Mr. Bruschi has decided to retire, and soil erosion is going to have to be handled. Mr. Gale, do you allow municipalities just to contract, for instance, in peak times, to contract 1 or 2 inspectors to add to their staff?
No, because quite honestly, I run a pretty tight ship. If we need one building inspector who's cross-trained, I use his time up.
Okay.
And so there's really no time left over for me to send him elsewhere, because we need him where I've got him assigned. And that's, again, how come that's the efficiencies that we have built in.
And the next question I have is, if you did this for Grand Traverse County, would you save us money?
Not on soil erosion.
Not on soil erosion, just on building inspections?
On the combination of the two, yes. And on building inspections too, but certainly on the combination of the two. Honestly,
I appreciate your honesty.
Honestly, your deficit would go away on the soil erosion side if we were doing both.
Well, I want it to go away, and I don't care how it goes away, I want it to go away, but I'm one of 7.
Anybody else questions for Bert? Mr. Klaus?
Yes, Mr. Gale, you don't do Leelanau County inspections, do you?
We do not.
Well, and last I knew, Charlie Sessoms.
Charlie Sessom works for them part-time, he works for us part-time.
Okay, so you do allow part-time inspectors to come here?
It would depend on volume. I would assign a full-time staff here, and then you're gonna get busy in the summertime. It's just the way it is, so I bring in additional help for that.
Oh, so Charlie's on staff in Leelanau County, but he works for you part-time?
Yep, that's true. Okay. He used to work for me full-time.
When you were at Benzie, when he was at Benzie?
When he was at Benzie, and then he left employment because he wanted to go back into the building trades. Then when he came back, I had already filled the position,
Yeah.
So that didn't work out so well for Charlie.
And Steve Houghton, that's not the Steve that used
That-
to manage the Benzie County,
It is not.
but it was Hogan, I think. Was it Steve Hogan?
It is Steve Hogan.
Right.
The Benzie County inspector's name is very similar, and I have to always make sure I tell folks it's not the same guy. His name
Okay.
is Steve Houghton.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I'm impressed that we have the ability to save our citizens money. I don't really think we should be stocking away money on the back of our taxpayers to fatten up the budget, fatten up our savings. So I'm concerned about the amount of money that this is costing our citizens. Now, another thing, I've heard rumors, not about you, but about contracted companies like yours, that you don't give good coverage, people have to wait, it's not as good as what we've got now because everyone's right here. How would you respond to that?
If the call, excuse me, if the inspection request comes in by 3:30, it's put on tomorrow's inspection schedule.
Have you had a lot of complaints from other municipalities about your services?
No, no. We have an awful lot of them that we've had for 15, 18 years, and we wouldn't have them if they weren't happy.
And one of the big secrets of your success is cross-training.
It's cross-training and efficiencies. You know, if I have a community that doesn't need a full-time, let's just say a full-time building inspector, well, maybe one of my other communities don't need a full-time building inspector. So you know what? He gets to drive, when he's done in this community, over to the other community and take care of that area. Hence, I've hired one guy where they would have had to hire a guy here and a guy over there and pay two people. One car, one guy, one set of fringe benefits, you know, the whole snowball effect for efficiency.
I assume you have numbers to monitor and manage the efficiencies within your own business.
That's my job. You know, I come from the electrical trade. I'm a master electrician, electrical contractor. I was electrical inspector, still am. I've been on 2 jobs in the last year and a half, maybe, to do an inspection because I had an inspector sick. I spend my days generally doing zoning administration and monitoring the business.
Do you have a comprehensive certification in soil erosion yourself?
I do.
I thought so. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, David?
Well, I didn't want to leave without talking about the administrative side of this equation. All the paperwork, you know, all the documentation, the planning process that builders have to go through at the beginning of, you know, when they're putting their, getting their permits. They have to have the plan review, and how's that all work with your?
Yep, we do all of that. From the time that they pick up the permit application to the time they bring it back, the time we do the plan review, do all the administrative things, you know, the licensure check, the whole deal. Then the permit's issued and the monitoring of the project, the receiving of requests for inspections, the proper documentation of those inspections, and/or mailing out of correction notices, those kinds of things. All come right from our staff.
And as far as office space and office equipment and all those things?
Very similar to what you saw us do in Clinton County. We would occupy your building department here in the county building. And we would be looking for, you know, that space along with the computer system and copy machine. The rest of it we would supply.
All the employees?
All the employees, all the vehicles, et cetera.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
And you would negotiate the indirect costs that the county would bill you back for office space and equipment?
That would be part of the agreement, that would be provided with our agreement. Yes.
Any other questions?
We'd pay for that.
Yeah, we
The county would pay for that. I'm sorry.
Which
do
right now,
now.
which right now we do not. It's billed back to the
It's part of
enterprise
this,
fund.
We pay
fees
for it.
cover that.
We pay for it. Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just so that you know that the indirect costs that we are covering with Bruce's department right now is just shy of $117,000 indirect cost and $62,000 in rent. So that's all covered.
180 something?
100, close to 180,000. Yeah. That's all
And-
covered
and-
under Bruce's.
Just to explain what that means, is that if you contract this out to AGS, that 180,000 will have to be reallocated throughout the system, so that every other department in the county would pay that 180,000. It's not going to disappear. It just won't be covered by permit fees. Unless you want to raise the permit fees in excess of what.
Well, what Dave's talking about, he probably remembers Clinton County. I believe in Clinton County, they chose to increase our permit fee by 5% to cover those indirect costs that we're talking about. So the county would keep 5% of the fees. I believe that they're still the same way, by the way.
Where are they now? I mean, they're not on your list. Why?
Oh, they're not on our, Ionia County, I'm sorry. Ionia County raised it 5%. They actually went back in-house. It's had to have been 13, 14 years ago.
Right after I left then.
No. Ryan Woods came in.
Yeah, after I left, Brian Wood came in.
Oh, then right after you left. Yes.
Anybody else?
Gary was still president at that time?
I was president at that time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Bert, for coming, and appreciate it. This has been great.
Thank you for the exceptionally detailed information.
Yeah.
You clearly spent a lot of time on it for us.
If any of you have any questions, please call me. There's so much more to this than I could tell you. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bert. Very kind of you.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any public comment on this subject
Absolutely.
before we leave it?
Absolutely. If this is time for public comment, if you'd like to, please.
Jay Zollinger, Acme Township Supervisor. Glad to see you all tonight. A couple comments. I think it is important we watch what our citizens pay. I think we ought to understand all this extra money, because I doubt it's all extra, as Bruce said. We have the same thing. We take money in that you use later for work. I don't know how much that is, but that's important to understand, because that's money you owe back for work to be done in the future. I don't think this enterprise fund should be a profit maker, but it ought to cover the expenses. So that's fair to look at that. If it's over, we ought to cut it back and do it. I think the same thing is true of soil erosion. It was talked about before. Soil erosion's permit fees hadn't been raised for a long time. And I think it's right to raise them to the reasonable level that in fact makes it like an enterprise fund, and therefore you're not subsidizing it out of other money. I think that's a very good way to do. I think that was discussed once before, ought to be looked at. And one of the things that, for me on all this, you can do some stuff in-house, some stuff you don't. We need to understand what's the right things to do, not just jump out of the frying pan into fire. But one thing is, if you get the fees right for both, you're not subsidizing. That helps that piece of general fund money. Two is get good people that really understand, our planning people like John Sykins, and people, to go look at some of this stuff and be creative. There's multiple ways to do the end answer that serves the citizens, serves us financially, because all of this is not going to pay for our unfunded pension. It's just ought to pay for itself. And I think that's a very important thing. All your zoning is done by townships or other entities. We don't outsource zoning around here, so everybody does their own. And there are some differences in fees, and having that and having people locally know that is very helpful when they go out and do the work they do, whether it's soil erosion, whether it's building trades and building construction activities. So just there's other ways to look at this. I've done a lot of reorganization, and one of the things I would encourage you is you have people in-house that could go look at a lot of this and come back and give you answers, and go look at the data that's available, the historical things we need to do. You talked once before about updating the ordinance, needs to be done. Put those things on a list and we ought to be doing them. It doesn't take that long to do them. Update those fees aren't that long of an effort. There's people who can do that. please, just encourage you to do those kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment. Going once, going twice?
Excuse me, is this the second public comment, is that where you're at?
No, we're going to have another public comment at the end. You can make it then if you want, or you can make one now.
If you have comment on this subject,
On this
this would be the
subject.
time to make that.
I would do that.
Great, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Bill Packer. I'm owner of Packer Builders. My address 3437 Holiday View Drive in Traverse City. And I've been to several of the commissioner meetings here regarding the soil and erosion, so I'm going to keep my comments focused on that. Last time we were in here, Mr. Ramey came up with three proposals, an A, B, and a C here. And to keep it maybe a little bit more focused too, I looked up the soil erosion permit fees, and Category 3, which he had 6 categories down here. Category 3 is a new home construction, which is the simplest. The rest are smaller, and then it goes into agricultural, industrial, etc. So let's just stay with the new home construction. Currently, the soil erosion permit fee is $113. Okay, in Grand Traverse County. Bruce's proposals, B and C, would increase that fee to $200 per permit. And Commissioner Crope, I'd like to address your comment there and your concern, rightly so, that is a 76% increase. It's $87. And I look at this, I've been doing this for a long time in the business here, and if someone's building a $25,000 addition, or if they're building $1 million homes, the $87 is not going to keep them from pursuing that project there, you know. So I understand your concern, but I don't think that's going to prevent someone from moving ahead with that. At the $200 level, it also, according to Bruce's here, the permit fees will cover plan review, permit, initial, interim, and final inspections. And any additional inspections would cost more. I think we all understand that. Most of the builders and the tradespeople do understand that. Currently, I also looked up to the Benzie County, what I can find online right now. Benzie County, their soil and erosion permit fee for a single-family residence is $240. So if the $200 will keep us in a position where we're revenue neutral, I don't see why we can't fix that in-house. If we're not getting into, as Commissioner Maxbauer mentioned, if we're not getting into our neighbors' taxes to fund our projects. So what... And we also know that Mr. Bruschi is leaving at the end of this month here. We're coming into our busy season, our busy building season here, and the department will have to hire another soil erosion inspector. We do understand that. But I think with the combined, the increase in the fees here, that I think that we can fix this in-house, and I'd like to see the soil erosion department just fixed rather than scrapping the thing and starting it all over. And just to comment on the building department, we've got a great building department. It functions well. All the builders, et cetera, get along with the building department. They do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir, come on up. Now, I want to warn you, we're not talking about soil erosion right now. We're talking about the building. Okay. So your comment, I probably should have stopped you and made you talk when we were bringing up soil erosion.
We've combined the two because of the presentation by Mr. Gale. He's saying he can't talk about soil erosion without talking about building.
Okay.
So I think we've created a situation where we have to talk about these two as a combination.
Everyone else
Because
on the
that's
board
the way
agree
his
on that?
presentation was.
Okay.
Mr. Lathrop, I was just trying to keep myself a little more focused on the soil erosion aspect of that rather than going off.
You know, it's probably my inexperience. I'm just trying to follow the agenda. I'm pretty green at this, so I apologize. But I thought these were going to be discussed as separate items. So. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Wally Zimba, 1806 Pinewood Avenue, TC. They keep talking about saving money for the taxpayer by going to a private entity. from what I'm understanding, the fees are going to be the same or more under the private entity, so the taxpayer is not making any saving. And as far as building code departments, they are, the permit fees are what provides the monies for that. They're supposed to be self-sustaining, and that's the way the law was set up years ago, and that's the way all these communities are supposed to be operating under. I don't see any savings. He's talking about a $70 fee for re-inspections. Grand Traverse County has a $50 re-inspection fee right now. And I believe that it's warranted because of some of the situations that they have out there. I do part-time inspections for the county, electrical. And some of the things that these people do, they deserve to have it re-inspected at an additional fee. A lot of times they're using the inspectors as their punch list providers. So we're spending time doing stuff that they were supposed to do in the first place. Secondly, a lot of them they don't take the time to study the codes or learn the codes, and they just do not do it. And I used to work for the state in Grand Traverse County years ago, and it was 3-4 days out before we could get to an inspection that was called in. Grand Traverse County is very rare where there's a day that if you either call it in that day or the day before, you will get that inspection that next day or that day. It's very rare when you don't get them. Even when it gets swamped, they still provide that service, and that's all the departments in their service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't be shy now. Anybody else? Come on up, sir.
My name's Dave Fashbaugh, 725 Brackle Point Drive, Traverse City, Michigan. I guess one of the thoughts I had is, does he provide services to enforce licensing? I'm an electrician by trade. Electrical inspectors are supposed to enforce licensing as well. Do they enforce licensing through your company? We do. And do they, I guess as far as the safety aspect of things, I know the electrical, I can't have a hard time believing that a 1,000 square foot house would have the same inspection as a 15,000 square foot house. I mean, to me, the guy would be really beating it to get through a 15,000 square foot house to look at all of the electrical apparatuses in that size of a house compared to a 1,000 square foot house. To me, you're reducing the cost of the inspection for the person that can afford the 15,000 square foot house versus the person that can only afford the 1,000 square foot house. It's nice having a flat rate, but is that fair for the person that lives in the 1,000 square foot house? You know.
Okay. I don't know if I'm allowed to let you, this is public comment.
Yep.
Okay, so I can bring him back up to answer that question after public comment's over?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got, I guess.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else? Bert, do you want to answer that question?
Sure.
Go, please.
Every community has their own ordinance that you have for enforcement. And I'm sure Grand Traverse County is probably no different. Every one of our communities, we do licensure checks before a permit's ever issued. If we catch somebody working without a license that's supposed to get a license, we give them one warning. You know, there is a human side to what we do. The second time we catch them, they get a ticket. And we write the ticket, we issue the ticket, and we monitor the ticket, because quite frankly, most of the time the courts won't report back to us that something's happened with the ticket after we write it. So yes, we do that. As far as the fees go, our flat fee is $195 for a new residence for all three trades. Again, once the inspector's on the job site, if it takes him 30 minutes to do the inspection, that's great. You know what? If it takes him an hour to do the inspection, that's great too. He's already there. the difference in the permit fees, and you'll see it in the paperwork that I gave you, is very large. You know, we're talking, in some instances, a couple $100 difference in the fee. That, you know, if you took the, I don't remember how many permits that was issued, but if you saved $100 on every permit, you're probably going to save $200,000 or $300,000 in a year.
For taxpayers.
For the taxpayers.
Thank you, Bert.
Yep.
Any other public comment? Okay, then I'll
Mr. Chairman,
close.
may I make a?
Sure, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to thank Mr. Packer for his comment about the increase, and this, I think, is a good time to clarify. I think, I agree that the dollar amount, I absolutely agree, and I also agree that our fees should be raised, and I think that the idea is revenue neutral, at least for me. I can't speak for others when it comes to these, because Commissioner Maxbauer is right. When it isn't revenue neutral, all of a sudden our neighbors are going towards paying for our new garages and whatever it is. So I really liked Mr. Ramai's suggestions on the fees. The reason the 76% number bothered me, well, number one, I knew a constituent would ask, so I needed to have an educated answer since I'm not real good at building codes, clearly. But the other one was, how do we get to a point where our county user fees are 76% off? How many years have the taxpayers been subsidizing permits that should have been revenue neutral? And that was really my point. So I just wanted to make it clear that I agree, absolutely, the fees need to go up the way they did. I was disappointed that a little over a year ago, the county initiated a 5% across-the-board increase in fees, and at that time, I was with Parks. And we decided to use that as an opportunity to look at all of our fees and make sure that we weren't having your general taxpayer subsidizing someone's kid's swim lessons. So we did a real in-depth analysis in our department. My understanding was other departments had as well. So when I saw a 76% number, that was what my remark was at. So thank you for your thoughtful comment, which allowed me to kind of clarify that. I am absolutely on board with Mr. Ramai's fee increases that he had given to us.
Thank you. Any other more comments for Mr. Gale or about this subject from the board or the audience? If not, we'll close public comment. Board? Okay. Then we're going to go on then, I think I'm doing right here, to Department Action items. Our IT man is ready to, he's waited so patiently, thank you.
And Sarah.
Good evening, Don Sheehan, County IT Director. And I'm here tonight to talk about a new website for the county. And it was back in September of last year that the previous board gave approval to go out for an RFP to look for a new website for the county. And some of the reasons why are we looking for a new website, and some of those are just the design has not been updated since 2007. So we're running off a pretty old design that's sitting out there. The website is not mobile friendly. And what do I mean by that? I don't know if you've tried to access our site through a smartphone. It doesn't auto resize. It doesn't give it more of an app look, I guess I would say, when you're doing that. And you can get that from new websites. And they call it a responsive design, so that we can still edit the website one time, one place, but it'll still have some of those features of auto sizing it to work very well on mobile devices. And through our statistics, we have over 30% of our constituents are coming in using mobile devices, and that's probably only going to increase as we go over time. So the other thing that we've had from our own internal users is just some of the editing capabilities of the site. It's difficult, and what we've done, and we've probably been doing it at least 10 years now, the departments update their own content. So we have 30 to 40 users out there that edit their own content on the website. And that's really why some of them have said, hey, we want to use a different website software. This is really difficult to edit. Some of the design options where they're kind of like on the county homepage, our menus are there. They'd like more flexibility, especially the bigger departments like the Sheriff's Department, to say, you know, we don't want to see everything in the county. We'd like to be able to highlight our own departments and categories and yet still be a part of the site. And so those are the different reasons why we're looking for a new website. And so we did go out for the RFP. We had 13 responses on that, and we ended up forming a website evaluation committee, and that was represented by 12 different departments that sat in on that committee. We narrowed it down to three choices, who we had come in and do on-site demonstrations. And after that, we narrowed it down to 2, where we felt the one really did not have the full feature set that we saw with the other 2. And they opened up test websites for us, so we could go in and try the editing and see what it was like. And someone came up with a great idea. Why don't we all do it together and sit here and see? And we had the vendor on backup, so they could actually come in too. So we made sure that we fully understood when we were doing that editing that it was what we thought was true. We didn't want to make any assumptions. But one vendor really stood out after that. And even when I go back and look at the ratings when we did the written proposal, our top choice didn't change as we went through that entire process. And so what I'd like to do is recommend that we do move forward with doing a new website for the county. And all the departments have agreed to come back in and be under one umbrella for this. And I think it's an opportunity that if we don't do something here, I don't think I'm going to see that opportunity again.
Could you explain what that means?
Well, we have, like, 911 has their own site. So we have links to our site to theirs. They have links back to us, but they have a different design. So what we'd like to see is, a standard navigation for when employee or people are constituents coming into the website. We have that consistent design. The senior center has a separate site, and that was really, they came from the city to the county and just kind of kept it. But we had the sheriff's department talking about going somewhere else, and they said, hey, we'll move along on this. They'll stay here, and they'll stay with the site. So I think from a searching standpoint too, people come in and look at our site, and we have some places where I would never guess who does something. Usually animal control is under the sheriff's department. But if you go there and look, maybe they'll have a link for you. But at least if we're all under one site and you do the searching and they look for animal, they're going to find it under the health department. They're going to locate that. And when people have different sites, you lose some of that searchability and the location of services and who's providing them. So, and I had one person who, and let's see, where did I put that? That was on our committee and gave a comment, and I couldn't have put it better. But basically they said this is a project much larger than just making editing easier, and that's kind of what we get from some of our people when they look at it. But it encompasses the ability of the county to rebrand itself, provide improved information that is easier for the public to find and utilize. And I really think that is what it comes down to.
Okay, any questions? Commissioner Kropa.
I'd like to make a motion to request approval to negotiate a contract with Icon Enterprises, Inc., Civic Plus, in the amount of $38,317 with annual support of $5,749.
Is there a second?
Support.
I just wanted to thank Don. This is way over my head, and I understood it and appreciated it. And the committee that you put together and their comments was really helpful. I think that simple and efficient government is what we're trying to provide, and the taxpayers are the consumers, and our product is all going to be encompassed in one thing with this expense, and I think it's great. So fully in support of that. Looking forward to seeing it all under one easy-to-use process for the people that are paying for it.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
Don, I was a little confused by the ongoing cost numbers. They're significantly different between some of the vendors, how much the ongoing cost is. What I did is I scaled this thing out based on, what it's going to cost overall for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And, even the $22,000 bid looks really good until you factor in the fact that it's going to cost you $200,000 to operate it in the next 10 years, So that was kind of the first question I had, was the fact that, what exactly are we getting in that ongoing cost? And the second question is, do we have the funds in your 2015 budget to do this, or is this something we have to find extra funding for?
The funds are in the budget, and I've run it through as a capital expense, so it would actually get expensed over multiple years, which is usually what we do, anything over $5,000. So that is there in the budget. It was approved. On the other one, the ongoing cost, the one proposal was so high, and actually they were going to use client software that we had to license to let each person be able to maintain the site. And what we're really looking for is something that's browser-based. So there's no software required at all. You access it through a browser to do the editing. And that's what we currently have. And the nice thing is people can change the site from home if they have to. You know, if we had the bad roads, the new site allows us to put an emergency alert out there. We could have the person authorized to do that and not have to come here to be able to do it. So, but what it does include, the vendor is hosting the site for us at their facility. So this is a cloud-based platform. We're not the ones doing it. And they, you know, we did background check on that whole facility also. I mean, they have multiple providers, multiple generators, multiple power sources, those type of things to host it. It also includes ongoing updates to the website. So Civic Plus is a company that this is the only business they do is public websites. They have 1,700 customers. So they have a regular input of features, requests from those customers. So that's what a lot of vendors did not offer for us, was they will add features as part of the support cost as we move forward without an additional cost on our part.
Mr. Benda.
I'd like to back up a little bit to the beginning of this. When I first arrived here, we had a group. I asked Sarah to get a bunch of people together to look at the website. And, you know, the concept I had was every month we're going to go to a meeting. You know, the departments will appoint someone to come to this meeting, and they will look at a website, and they will critique it, and then that department will go off and make changes and come back the next month, and we'll review what they did and review a new website, you know, for the other half of the meeting. We'll review the next website and move forward. And Sarah has coordinated that since the beginning. And at the beginning, they said, well, we need a new website. The content management system is horrible. And I said, well, the content is horrible too. It's not really very good. You go out to these pages and there's stuff from, 20 years ago or 10 years ago on there, and it's just not been updated. So it really forced everybody to look at the site and get the content up to scratch. And I said, when you get the content up to snuff, then we'll talk about spending the money on a new design and new software. And they did that. And this is the culmination of that. And they did a fantastic job of reviewing the vendors and going through the process. I think we're going to get a great product out of it.
Yeah, we had a good group of people, and people that were willing to say, yeah, that'll work for me, coming together on this. So we are still talking about a 4 to 6 month process to have a designer come in, talk to departments about our own unique design for Grand Traverse, converting all of our content into the new website from all of the multiple sites, and then going live with it.
Yeah. And this is part of our strategic plan. It's one of the higher priorities that the former board put us on, and it's where we're going. I mean, we've got to do this for our constituents.
Thank you, David. Dr. Johnson.
A question and a couple comments. The local organization that didn't pass what you wanted, did you let them know what areas they kind of didn't?
I did. I called them back
to help them maybe in the future, and I don't know how old that company is or whatever, but just maybe some feedback to help.
Yeah, and they would have come up with a great design for us. It was some of the underlying feature set in the maintenance is really what kind of came down underneath there.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I did talk to them, and they were disappointed. Obviously, we didn't select them, but we did have a conversation.
The advantage that this will have is once they have everybody on the same site, if you will, moving forward, if they got to change it again, it's so much easier, because then you don't fight the issues you'll be having now. So.
And one other thing that is actually part of the package is 4 years, we get a built-in redesign as a part of our support fee. So hopefully we don't get as old as we got this time, and we can keep moving forward, because we all know it just continues to change.
And I was impressed with how in-depth you did testing already, so that was good to see.
Nice.
So.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
I would just note that, even though we've been kind of working at this a little piecemeal, our staff has done a fabulous job of getting us upgraded to where we are today. They really have. I can't give them enough credit. I'd be a lot smarter at that stuff than I am to get to where we are, because it's, from where we were even 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, to where we are now is a significant difference.
Yeah, Sarah had a meeting today, didn't she?
Yeah, I believe she did.
Yeah.
Sarah's done it.
Yeah, there she is.
She warned me that mine's next.
Yeah, very
You've
cool.
done great, Sarah.
Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner.
So you said this is the only thing that this company does, this Civic Plus, is county websites, township websites, that's what?
Correct.
Okay. So it sounds like that we would benefit not just from the input of our own employees and departments, but you said that they take different features that other entities sort of suggest and build them in.
Right.
So we're going to benefit from 1,700 other public entities that have features we probably never even thought of.
Very cool.
So, yeah, I think that's very cool. I think it will make a big difference.
Anybody else?
I have a question for Don. We have a relationship with East Bay Township in providing a website for them. Am I correct in that?
We do not provide a website, we do email hosting.
Email hosting, okay, so
Right.
that is not affected in any way?
No.
With this at all?
Correct.
Okay. I know at our orientation, we had learned that East Bay Township had some sort of relationship with us in the way of IT, but that...
Yep, that's the only piece of it.
Okay. Why? That was my question, was why. And I asked you, and you told me that we provide that service for entities in our county. And I wasn't certain, I had asked you, I believe, if someone else had taken us up on that, but I believe the answer was no. But I was a little confused by that relationship and if there was a contractual obligation between the two.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, they were looking at having to go in and replace a mail server and go through this whole upgrade process, and did they want to do it anymore? They only needed like 13 email addresses. It was very easy to take their name, so they still have their own particular email address, and add it in. So, and we charge them just the same fee that we charge any other departmental user for that email address.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Then let's bring this, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Let's have a roll call.
Propa?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Max Bauer?
No.
Lathrop?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, then we move on to Dean, this is your time.
Thank you. Excuse me, in your packet, we've completed a preliminary close of our 2014 fiscal year. It's a calendar year, and what I've presented here is just some summary information for the general fund. On page 17 is a summary of the revenues by department, and the format is pretty straightforward. The first column is the budget, then actual, and then an over-under variance amount with some totals down at the bottom. A lot of detail supporting these numbers. It would be hard to get into specifics, but then the next page, a similar format, it's the expenditure side of the budget, and again, this is just your general fund, but it is the main fund that supports a lot of the other funds. If you look at the bottom of page 18, starting with Department 968, you'll see the appropriation items. For example, the Health Department is the first one. Those are some large numbers, but those are amounts that the general fund appropriates to some of your other main operating funds. But going back to the revenues, you can see that there are variances. You know, we establish a budget, we monitor that budget, and bring budget adjustments to the board on a regular basis. We don't always hit our revenue estimates, and if you look at the total down at the bottom, you can see, well, we missed the revenue estimate by 1.3 million. That's a big number. However, most of that was the fund balance that we budgeted in the general fund. For 2014, the final amended use of fund balance was $1,366,000. And that is all included in that first department, the non-department item at the top. So overall, even though we have pluses and minuses, I think we did fairly well compared to our budget. You see that, though, more clearly on the expenditure side of things. If you look at page 18, you can see in most cases, there's only one case where we actually over-expended what was budgeted, and there's an explanation for that, the substance abuse. We received an additional payment from the state, and I have recorded the 50% distribution to, the local substance abuse coordinating agency, and that's the reason that department is over budget. But you can see all of the other departments are under budget to the tune of...
Tell them it was liquor tax.
Yeah, that's the liquor tax. For 3 years running now, we've actually received a fourth payment from the state. They give us an estimate of what we're going to receive, and we budget that, but they don't tell us what that fourth payment is. So we're kind of, on January 30th, we get the amount. It's too late to amend the budget, so...
And the way that liquor tax works is 50% of it has to be given to your local, your designated substance abuse coordinating agency, or you have to roll back your tax rate for the same amount. So it's an automatic, pretty much for us, that if we get $500,000, they get $250,000 of it. So
and that's exactly, the payment was twice the $269,000 difference, and that was a nice surprise. It's nice revenue, but we don't get to keep 100% of that. So, but all in all, when you look at in the general fund, 1.1 million less was expended than what was budgeted. $746,000 of that was personnel money. That was, we budget full staffing, but we had a situation in 2014 that was probably a little different than most years. We had a lot of staffing vacancies. Quite a few of those were in our sheriff's office, and those allow you to accumulate savings, in the budget, which really helped to offset significantly our use of fund balance. Bottom line on the bottom of page 18, that $273,000 negative number is the actual use of fund balance for 2014. So almost 1.1 million less than we planned on. That's a pretty good year compared to budget. And this is the time where I have to compliment all of the departments and the elected officials that have a budget that's somehow centered or associated with our general fund. They manage their budget over the course of the year. Before the claims or the invoices go to the audit committee, we're making line item adjustments. If someone's gas line item is running more than what they budgeted, they're going to make a sacrifice someplace else. But that's evident here. I mean, in addition to the personnel savings, you had $250,000 to $270,000 in other line items that wasn't expended, and it all makes a difference. Those departments are doing their job, living within the amount that you appropriate. So this is a preliminary close. One estimate that's rather large is the outstanding tax receivable. I won't know exactly what those settlements are with the local units until probably the first week of March. I think I've estimated very conservatively on that. I'm actually hoping that use of fund balance might be less than the 273, but I won't know that until probably for at least another month or month and a half. And then, of course, the auditors come in. They're here in April. They always have the final say on what the final numbers are, and they have the luxury of having about 6 more weeks to 2 months more history or time that passes than I have. We do try to close the books by the middle of February so we can move on with 2015. So, but if we have any significant adjustments, I'll report that back to you in the future. So I was happy with how we closed. Dave and I had a brief discussion, and again, I just want to thank all of the departments. I think they do a great job during the year. They let us know if we're tracking negatively, and of course, we had, you know, some good things happen. I mean, our gas line items, we had very low gasoline prices, and all of those things make a difference. But the main reason for the significant reduction in the use of fund balance was the staffing, the fact that we were not at full staff for the year.
But Dean, we should also note, though, even though we were not at full staff, we had some retirements in 2014 of some individuals. They had some longevity checks and some large payouts when they left too. So even though, you know, we had some savings when the positions were vacant, we had some pretty sizable expenditures when they left too.
And those are all, they're covered.
Right, I understand that, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's good to talk about the fact that, you know, we had some vacancies and therefore we had some reserves, but, you know, when these long-term employees left, they had some pretty big payouts for personal days and longevity that was banked that we had to give out too. So there were some big expenditures when they left too.
There were
questions for Dean?
Oh, sorry. Just one more comment. There were a couple of items. We had 2 vehicles that we planned on purchasing that the board approved to purchase in December, but we did not receive those vehicles. You'll see budget adjustments next to cover those. That would have actually increased the use of fund balance by about $63,000, but those vehicles did not arrive until, I think, the 3rd week in January, so that ends up being an expenditure in your next fiscal year.
Any questions? Commissioner?
Just to get getting a grasp on fund accounting after 21 years of being a cost accountant, the reason why, you know, like you said, all the departments either met or were under their expenditure that they had in the budget. So that is why, other than, and I understand the mental health, the substance abuse, I understand that. And that's why we only ended up using $273,000 in fund balance. And the reason why that shows us with a under of 1.2 million is because we had balanced the 2014 budget allocating funds to the different departments from the general fund to balance things. But we didn't end up using it.
That's correct.
Okay.
We don't actually allocate the fund balance to, or even tax revenue to the various departments. It's in that non-departmental revenue.
So to balance the 2015 budget, when we're sitting here a year from now looking at this number, assuming that our county departments either meet or go under their expected expenditures and meet or exceed their expected revenues, what is the number that we had assumed would be the maximum pullout from the fund balance to balance the 2015 budget?
For 2015, it was about $650,000. It's actually a little higher because of the vehicle adjustments, but it was under, when Dave presented his recommended budget in December, we had that right around $650.
Okay.
I think it was actually $640.
Yeah, I think we were roughly 1.2 or 1.3, which would have been equal or around 14, except for the 911 surcharge, then cut it in roughly in half.
Well, it was like 1.7.
Right.
Yeah.
It was 1.7, the surcharge got it down to $1 million, and then we had we used the revenue sharing.
Okay.
It was revenue sharing came in, I think we had $270,000 that we didn't expect. The state is working on their fiscal year, not ours. We thought that we would have to expend all of our funds, but they actually started October 1, giving us payments, and we'll take their money.
So we're looking at a maximum withdrawal for, I mean, if everything, which obviously it doesn't, but of a roughly between $600,000 and $650,000 from the general fund to balance if everything stays as budgeted.
Right.
Okay.
And that, you can compare that, and the reason that 650 is actually really good for us is the 750 that we spent in, or saved in personnel costs just due to attrition last year. You know, the turnover, net of retirements and all that, was $750,000. So we're actually, in our budget, in good shape right now.
Yes, Doctor.
Don't forget whatever adjustments we have to the CPOs. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but.
That's true.
As far as revenue increase?
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the thing that
Decrease.
so you budget, I'm just curious on the vehicle, kind of learning too. So if the vehicle was it purchased before the end of the year and you go by when it's received, or?
We actually, the board approved, this is the difference between budgeting and, generally accepted accounting principles. The board approved the purchase of a van for the jail and an additional patrol car for the sheriff in December. Those purchase orders were committed to, but the vehicles did not show up until, and it's not an expenditure until we have that piece of equipment. So you've got that mismatch.
Okay.
I mean, it was budgeted in 2014, but we did not have an accounting, the transaction that could be recorded. You had an encumbrance, but it's not an expenditure until we take delivery.
Get it in hand,
Yeah.
basically.
We don't write the check until we have it in hand.
Right.
Okay. Do you want any more questions? Yes, Commissioner.
I'm over here.
On the end.
I'm on the end. I want to touch upon this briefly as long as we're talking about the general fund. Commissioner Wheelock, at our last meeting, made a comment that he knew that there was $500,000 approximately that we're going to have to pay for the Cass Road Bridge out of general fund. Your memory's clearly better than mine. I sure don't remember that number ever being put out there. But since Commissioner Wheelock recalls it, I'm sure his memory's better than mine. Why wasn't this budgeted?
We didn't know about it until November?
We knew there would be a cost. We didn't know what the specific dollar amount was going to be until very late in the year.
Yeah, I mean,
And we didn't anticipate that any of it would be spent in this budget year.
Yeah, and it's unlikely that it'll be spent in this budget year. Most of it will be spent in the next budget year. A year and a half ago, back in 2013, it was stated that, we were going to have to go with a 5% match. And, all along, if you go through the history, and I just went through a bunch of this before our public meetings with stakeholders today, it's stated just about in every document that the commissioners and the city commission are in this together, and they are very much expectant that it's going to be covered. And in fact, there's a resolution out there that says there's going to be a minimal cost to the county. Well, that's great. But what we found out as the year progressed last year was somebody's going to have to come up with the money for the Cass Road Bridge, and we've raised all these funds, but those funders want to put the money into restoring the river, and if we can actually come up with all that money first, then we'll be able to maybe cover the Cass Road Bridge. And the Cass Road Bridge was a tack-on. It's like, what do you want to do with the bridge? It's not part of the project. It's part of the bridge. It's the bridge.
I did not want to digress into a discussion about the bridge. I just wanted to know why, if we knew the number, why it wasn't budgeted in 2015. You've answered the question. The money isn't going to be spent in 2016. Thank you.
The money.
Majority of it.
The money will be, some money will be spent in 2015.
Yes.
I think that should be made very clear.
At some point, the design will be completed, and in order to begin construction engineering, there's going to be a point where they're going to start to do that. And they're going to need commitments for the local match on that.
Right.
For the dollars to be spent to do the construction engineering, which is a local cost. So I don't know how much that is right now. The design's not complete. They were coming in next month to hopefully give us a better picture of what that's going to look like.
The fiscal year 2015 budget will include a payment for the Cass Road Bridge. We do not know the dollar amount, but it will. Combining that with a second payment roughly in 2016, assuming Part A and B fundraising go on track, those two totals will come near $500,000. And you did say that you knew we were coming up with around $500,000. My question is, we found this out in November, this budget wasn't passed till December, it's a significant gap. I do understand that we did not know the dollar amount, but we knew we had to come up with a minimum 5% grant match for the Michigan Critical Bridge Fund, and that is $150,000. So at the very least, I would assume $150,000 would have been placed in the
budget.
2015 budget, assuming all went well and the remainder was then paid. Of course, it could be more than $150,000 in fiscal year 15, but it is at least a minimum of the 5% match of the Michigan, the MDOT grant. So that is a disappointment to me, as I don't think that's a surprise to probably anyone in this room. But we don't know that, we did not know the dollar amount, except maybe Sunny did. I did not know the dollar amount. So it's okay, and this is where we're at. But they will be coming forward next month, hopefully with a dollar amount, but it will at least be at the very minimum $150,000 that will be in this budget, which is why I was clarifying the question about the fund balance use right now.
No, the $150,000 won't be spent in 2015.
That is what they said it will be spent in, because we have to get the permits. Troy said the permits are going out in June, and we have to have money up front in order to apply for those permits.
Well, that may be $150,000. But
That's
that's
what I'm
not the
talking about.
$150,000 5% match on the
Right, but that's
construction
what
of the
they
bridge.
said. We knew we have a minimum of
5% will be
$150,000.
spent, that $150,000, 5% of the 95% that the
Right.
state grant covers, that will be spent when, girders are purchased, when cement is poured.
That's true.
It's, when those dollars are paid by the state of Michigan, they'll pay 95% of them and send the other 5% for us to pay.
But we do
That'll be in
upfront funds prior
2016.
to the permitting process in June of 2015. We had to have funds secured.
Well, we are going to have funds secured in order to continue the process for the bridge.
Right, which permits are June.
And I don't know, right now, it doesn't look like there's any other funders to come forward to keep the project going.
And that means that's the county, that's the funder, with the permitting process beginning in June. It is what it is, but I just love it stated clearly for everybody so that there's no discrepancy that this bridge is paid for and that the fundraising has been finished, because it hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
Okay. Anything else, Dean?
Not on that.
Okay, do we move next to budget adjustments?
Yes, I have one page of budget adjustments that I would ask your approval on. The first one is a snowmobile grant that was approved earlier this year. And then in the middle of the page are the two vehicles, the patrol car and then the jail van, which have been received, which is an increase in the use of fund balance. With that use of fund balance, our total fund balance in the general fund right now stands at $705,645. And then there's a Commission on Aging adjustment to use fund balance to address their wait list for 2000, based on prior board action. So I would ask for your approval of these budget adjustments.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the budget adjustments as outlined by the Finance Director.
Motion by Wheelock, is there a second?
Support?
Support, who said that?
I did.
Commissioner Crawford, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, passes. Then we have credit rating.
Yes, if you, and Dave may have some comments here, but I should have been suspicious when I had the call to do this. They called this surveillance. I've never heard of that term before. But on a regular basis, we'll have the bond rating agencies will call and ask to discuss or review our financial situation. And this is the result of a review surveillance that was done last month. And very happy to report that they maintained our bond rating, our credit rating at A2, which is not a change. And that's, I was hoping that we would get an upgrade, but I'm not, I guess, disappointed that they didn't downgrade us. But our tax base and stable financial operations, and they also mention our fund balances. They refer to it as reserves, but they look at both our general fund and the tax revolving fund. Now, when you read through this, it's somewhat confusing because, and Dave pointed out, there's a paragraph where they talk about, on page 23, our manageable pension liabilities. They're including both the road commission and the pavilions in those numbers. So those are a lot larger than just the county pension obligation. So on one hand, they're looking at the county, our comprehensive annual financial report. They're looking at the numbers that are in the county audit, but yet they kind of zero down and they focus just on the general fund of the county. So I don't know why they do that. I wish it would be just the general fund or just the county, but they don't do that. They're at the bottom of page 22, they're talking primarily about your general fund and your tax revolving fund, but when they get into the debt and the pension, they're including the larger reporting entities. So, but just going through this briefly, we did maintain our rating, which helps us if we go out and issue any bonds, because that helps us get a very low financing cost or interest rate. They do mention the fact that we have a very sizable tax base, which has been improving in recent years. I was kind of surprised with the challenge that's reported on page 22, and they've not mentioned this before, but the advances that we had made to some of the townships for them to call a few bond issues, but also the advances that we made to the septic treatment facility. They're looking at that as a reduction in the cash reserves that we have in our general fund. That's true. I had quite a discussion with them on that and the fact that, you know, we have a contract in place, and, you know, we talked about the septic treatment facility quite a bit, but that was the one thing that I guess I really wasn't happy with that they reported on. But this is not my report, it's their report, and I don't have the ability to influence them one way or the other on this. But with that, I just thought that this is something that you should have for information. It's a very good review of our rating, in my opinion. We will continue to pay down those advances that we've made. I still think that was a great thing for us to do when you consider the fact that the county is also earning a higher rate of return on those advances, which, you know, it was what we needed to do, and I would do it again if we had to. So if there's any questions, I'll defer those to Dave.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
I just wanted to mention, regarding the pension liabilities, Dean, we had a discussion about this at a Michigan Association of Counties Economic Development Legislative Committee meeting. And many of the county commissioners that were present were reporting that they were being advised that the county general fund was being viewed as being responsible for the county road pensions and for instance, the pavilions pensions. Not necessarily obviously paying it out of the general fund now, because County Road has its own funding sources and the pavilions obviously has its own funding sources, but were those funding sources to go away, the general fund, I was told in this committee meeting, the general fund, Grand Traverse County general fund taxpayers would be responsible for those pensions, and maybe that's why they looked at it that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I really don't know why they look at the county entity as a whole on some issues. I mean, I could see that with the debt and the pension, but then they come back, their focus is primarily on your general fund. But in the event, I mean, we're fortunate here that we have a very well run and managed commission, and the pavilions is the same way. And the pavilion's pension is much better funded than the county is, and we obviously got some benefit from that in this rating analysis.
Commissioner Wheelock.
You know, Dean, when we talk about the advances or the money that the county advanced to the townships to pay off the water and sewer bonds, there was a huge benefit to the taxpayers of this community by doing that. I don't remember how many dollars were being saved, but even though we paid the bonds off early on their behalf, they're paying us a higher rate of interest than we were getting on our monies if we were just investing it at that point, and it's still a significant interest savings to the townships than what they were paying on the current bonds. So when the bonds became callable, there was a huge benefit to this community as a whole by the county paying off those bonds.
Just a follow-up comment to what Commissioner Wheelock said, with Garfield Township and even with Jay, both Chuck and Jay here, those townships paid off some of their bond issues with some of their own cash and reserves as well. But that's one of the reasons why they specifically mentioned here that our debt burden is very low. We have the ability to bond up to 10% of our tax base. It's called the legal debt margin. We're nowhere near that. So we have the ability to bond for quite a bit more, but the fact that our debt burden is so low is truly a benefit for the county and the citizens when we do have to borrow money, because they know that you have that capacity. But there were township bond issues that were paid off with their reserves, and they participated in providing the funds that we made to redeem the largest bond issue at the septage facility. And I mean, so that's reflected in this as well. So in the general fund, our cash reserves are adequate. We have our tax revolving fund to fall back on, and we're fine.
Commissioner Crawford.
I'm interested in this one statement. It says, it's on the bottom of page 22. Management is projecting a $700,000 operating deficit in fiscal 2014. However, officials expect the county to return to balanced operations in fiscal 2015 due to a recently passed 911 surcharge. Has the amount of that surcharge been set?
It was set in the general appropriations resolution.
What was the rate that was set?
$1.85.
$1.85.
Just to add, that when I talked to Moody's, it was probably around January 20th. I tend to be very conservative. At that point in time, I wish I would have known that the use of fund balance would have been more in the $300,000 range. I'm not sure it would have changed things that much, but as Dave mentioned earlier, with our reduced use of fund balance in 2015 and the fact that we generally have about that amount in unexpended personnel costs, that's a fair statement that they've made there. We do our plan, even though we budgeted to use fund balance, is to not use fund balance in 2015, and hopefully that's what we're able to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner?
This has nothing to do with your report, other than you're talking about bond ratings right now.
Correct.
And in November or December, Munson Hospital came to the board to use our bonding power to make a purchase. Do we just let that go, or do we get a percent of what they use, or are we able to? Is that just something that you just don't ever do, or do you just let people, businesses, corporations come in and use the county's bonding ability?
There are only, those bonds were issued through your hospital finance authority, and this is something that Dave has mentioned. We have historically or traditionally not charged a fee. In the case of the county, either our Board of Public Works or our own building authority bonds, you know, the county treasurer and the county, you're basically managing those bond issues for, you know, 20 years in a lot of cases. But the costs up front to issue are covered in the bond proceeds, but we're not providing or charging, you know, a fee for those services. It's pretty much the staff is providing, you know, the work or working with, you know, bond counsel and the financial advisor up front, and, you know, we're just doing that work for the life of the, with the bonds that were issued through the Hospital Finance Authority. Munson bears the full cost of that. There's no, and those financial obligations are accounted for and reported on their financial statements. We don't have any direct involvement.
You don't service them here in your office?
No, no.
We don't get a fee, but there is definitely a benefit to the community by using our bond rate.
Okay, so we do have administrative costs or no costs?
Not with the Hospital Finance Authority. Munson handles all of that, but with our own building authority, you know, when we issued bonds to build the Hall of Justice or our new health services building, or some of the Board of Public Works sewer or water bond issues, wastewater treatment plant for the city, we service those bond payments. The county treasurer is working with the local units, you know, collecting the amounts due. But that's part of the work that we're currently doing. It's not a lot of work, but there is that ongoing, you know, responsibility for the life of the bond issue to make sure that everybody's, you know.
So going off of what Commissioner Maxbauer said about not wanting to pay for someone else's soil erosion permit, the whole county is helping to, by a little bit, funding any of the bonds that we have.
It's true.
You know.
Yeah. Are you all set?
I'm set.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, in Midland County, I worked with the finance department we instituted, and with the Board of Commissioners, and with the townships, and with others that use county bond authority to establish a fee schedule, you know, and it was a sliding scale that, you know, for smaller issues, it was a smaller fee, and for larger issues, it was slightly larger. It didn't generate huge amounts of money, but it generated enough that, you know, it created a revenue account in the finance department, and around a few $1,000s a year.
One of the things that we do, though, and I would not be doing my job if I didn't disclose this, but we do charge the Board of Public Works indirect costs, which is a piece of my time and Dave's time and the treasurer's time that indirectly recovers some of that, but there are no direct fees for those services, which if we did invoice for those direct fees, they would be backed out of the indirect costs. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Now we go next to administration. Mr. David.
Hello. I've got a request in front of you to reorganize my office. I've been had a staff person out since June 4th of 2014. It's an office manager position, which has very limited utility in my office. My predecessor hired the office manager a few months, maybe a year before I came in. He did his work quite a bit differently than I do, and you know, I didn't need that type of a position in my office. Since that vacancy, Chris Kramer is, you know, you all know Chris. She's all over everything, and she manages the office very well. So I haven't really missed a lot of those functions due to the lapse in that position. What I don't have is anybody to delegate work to get things moving on various fronts. Things end up languishing because there's nobody to get to them. And I can be out-researched by just about every department in the county because they have deputy directors and I don't. I would like to hire a deputy director or a deputy administrator. But that is about $50,000 a year more than the current cost of my office manager position. And as I explained in my reorganization request, I think I can get some of what I need, or the essentials of what I need, by hiring a management and budget analyst, for lack of a better title, someone to actually do the research and be put on various tasks to do the due diligence that needs to be done on various projects and allow us to move more things forward more quickly. I just might point to, how long it took to get the CPO information together. There was nobody to actually do that. We did it as best we could in the time that we had in between the other things that we had to do. But there was really nobody to hand off to get that done. And the contracts with the city on the Woodmere property and the Front Street property and the records administration, central records agreement. I mean, there's just a number of things that need to be addressed that you just have to put it in the queue and wait till time, presents itself for you to get to it. So at any rate, I'm asking for the office manager to be eliminated and a management and budget analyst to be created. On another front, Sarah, who works in my office, has been doing the functions, I don't know how many of you know this, but there used to be a deputy administrator in my office and a buyer and a part-time secretary. So all those positions were eliminated, and they created an office manager in its stead. Sarah what we found is the buyer position used to do central purchasing, which meant that all the RFPs and all those things went through a central location, and this buyer did all the purchasing. They at one point eliminated the buyer and shoved that out to all the departments. And what we found is every time we come forward, not every time, but sometimes when we come forward with an RFP, commissioners will go, well, you didn't do this RFP right. It's glaring that it wasn't done by an expert, or somebody even, briefed in how to properly do it. So that, you don't have that expertise at every single department. So we end up doing a lot of that. We end up reviewing a lot of those RFPs and starting to change things and make them better. On the other hand, and another thing that we do now, that Sarah does for me, is the website committee, which I don't think is going to go away. She organizes and does the minutes for that. She brings everybody together. She makes sure that everything keeps moving with that. And I think that's a valuable function that we don't want to get rid of. And I want her to be able to do contract administration and more, get more involved in the purchasing side of things so that we're not wasting county money purchasing things that aren't the right things to purchase or the right way to purchase them. So I would propose, right now she's classified as a secretary. I would propose to call her a central services coordinator, which is essentially what she's been doing. And we'd like to hire an office clerk to do the perfunctory duties that are in our office, the mail and the, following up on copiers and doing typing and those kind of things for myself and the management and budget analyst. This is going to cost some extra money, but I think that if we get this management and budget analyst on board, the dividends that we'll get from the research and having things properly done and documented will help to pay for that position every year. So that's my presentation. I guess I'll turn it over to questions for now.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Wheelock.
Mr. Chairman, I would start by making a motion to approve the recommendation of the county administrator to reconstruct or reorganize his office.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a second by Max Bauer. Discussion. Go ahead.
David, if I read this correct, you're anticipating that this cost will be covered in this year's budget and in future years will cost an additional $24,809?
That's right.
Ongoing?
Well, for the office specialist.
Right, the total reorganization of your office would be a net increase of about $25,000 a year. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that I've said for a long time that we're piling way too much on Dave's plate. He can't possibly get done everything that we're asking him for. So, no, I certainly will support this reorganization if he thinks that this is the best way to help him get done what he has to do, because we all know that we get a little stressed out around the edges when it takes too long to get the information, or we could get information and the next week we find out that, you know, there was another piece of information we probably should have had. So, you know, and you know, we're all human about this, but there's only so much information you can put together, provide, and disseminate in a certain length of time. So, you know, I certainly support this change.
Dr. Johnson?
And I think it's important to note with the board we got now that I think we'll be asking Mr. Benda to do a lot more investigation and why is this and why is that. So I support it also. I think just on what workload I think we're going to drop on him too. So.
Anybody else?
Is that scary to you?
Commissioner Kropa, I remembered your name.
Thank you. I don't support this recommendation, but I support part of it. So just to clarify that, look at the smaller picture first and then the bigger picture. I absolutely support the change in the classification of both Chris and Sarah's jobs. They have done above and beyond what they need to do, and it is our job to acknowledge that and acknowledge what we have and why they've managed to go along on a skeleton crew so far. So that part of it I absolutely want to see happen immediately. What I don't want to see happen immediately is the other part, and it's real clear in your first paragraph on your letter here. When you say that due to the county's budget issues, it was not possible to fund my request for a new deputy administrator in the budget. What I hear you saying there is that you need a deputy administrator. This to me looks like a Band-Aid. So you and I have had these discussions for over a year. You have too many direct reports. I do not think that the structure of our county government is efficient or simple in any way. I don't think it is good for the staff or the citizens that are funding it. One of the things that I campaigned on that I know that other commissioners sitting beside me did is looking at the overall structure of this government and why it's not giving us the best output that it is. The people that we have right now that are dragging us along with this bad structure deserve to be rewarded, and that's why we saw Mr. Cooney come forward with a request for an employee in his department last year. I would much rather see $100,000 go to split up in raises for our valuable employees than to have a classification study done with across-the-board union-approved raises for maybe people that aren't necessary or don't deserve them, or for staff members that deserve above and beyond what a classification study would tell us. I would like to see them get their increase, and then I would like to see us finish what we started with our budgeting for outcomes process, looking at the structure and why we have an administrator that has dozens of direct reports coming to him. You can't possibly filter that much information. I don't care if you hire a part-time secretary. You can't. The entire big picture of this county is wrong, in my opinion, and that's why we have inefficiencies. We have citizens that think we aren't getting things done. We have staff members that are overworked, and we have commissioners that are frustrated. I would like to see us finish what we started, which is looking at the overall big picture of this county, but not to the detriment of the employees that are holding it up right now. So I will not be voting for this recommendation because we need to give the administrator's department the same due diligence that all of the other departments deserve with the budgeting for outcomes and the restructuring, the cross-training, the possible combining of governments, outsourcing, partnering with the townships. Until then, I don't think that this is an appropriate fix, other than I appreciate a department head coming forward with outstanding employees that deserve some recognition. So I will vote no, but if this does fail, I will certainly vote to approve the reclassification of both of your employees.
Can I?
Oh, of course.
I'm not sure if you read this right, but Chris Kramer isn't part of this. She's a board employee. Okay, she's doing a lot of my work. She's coordinating office functions, but she really works for you. Mm-hmm. And that classification is not addressed in this.
Oh, it isn't?
At all.
Okay.
Not that I don't think that Chris is working out a classification, I do. But it's the board's responsibility to deal with that. Mine says, the office manager, who used to be Linda Nelson in my office, I'm proposing to change that title to a management and budget analyst. Not call it an office manager anymore, but call it now a management and budget analyst with a different set of skills. And to take Sarah's position and for, I think, $3,400 a year, move it to a central services coordinator and hire a part-time secretary to do some of the, the mail work and those kind of things that are just time-consuming jobs. And that's how this is structured. It's structured to have that office manager move, become a management and budget analyst. Sarah's position go from secretary to central services coordinator, and then have a part-time office specialist.
So who's the office manager right now?
Right now, we don't have an office manager.
It was Linda, right?
Linda was the office manager.
So
And her position's been vacant since June 4th.
who's been doing Linda's job?
Pretty much Chris Kramer and Sarah. They've been kind of splitting the duties.
So why wouldn't Chris Kramer, by board recommendation, receive a reclassification, Sarah receive a reclassification, and then us look at the structure of your department and see if rather than 1.5 FTEs, we just need a deputy administrator? I feel like we're not doing the due diligence for the structure of the organization, but I want to make sure the employees are compensated that are working through the haphazard structure right now. I think that budgeting for outcomes might lead us to a different idea altogether of how the structure would be done for even how you're reported to. So to hire somebody, two people actually, bring in a full-time employee with benefits plus a part-time employee for a position that might not fix what you need and what ultimately what the citizens need to get the outcome that they need. I think this is jumping ahead, but I still want to support a raise for the people in the office.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Commissioner Coropa just changed my mind with, I would prefer if we took this piece by piece. I would absolutely support a change in reclassification for Sarah. I agree that Chris Kramer should also be considered, and I'm just wondering, in the meantime, I know that Chris Kramer is, I see her when I'm up there. I mean, she's barely got 30 seconds to speak to me because the phones are ringing and she's putting all this information together and she's online. I see it. Could you at least start until we really get into this, a discussion about restructuring? Could you get by instead of hiring somebody using a temporary?
For which position?
Mail, answering the phones.
Yeah, we could probably
Basically,
do
that's
that
what
for a
you're
short
asking
time.
for.
We could probably do that for a while. I think up to 6 months.
Yeah, why not?
But the other position is the one that would help me get some things moving, to be able to delegate some of this research work and
Well,
legwork.
isn't that what Sarah would be doing?
No, Sarah's going to be doing purchasing,
Okay.
contracts administration, and, making sure that contracts get before the board that need to be, before the board on a timely basis, and, doing the purchasing, looking at RFPs, making sure that those are done right, making sure the rules are always followed. That's a different functionality. Plus, she's doing the website committee. That's a different function than the secretary position that she was, or she used to do sometime in the past before I got here. But she's actually picked up all these other responsibilities that are more important for the county to have addressed. And, right now I got an office manager vacancy. What I'm trying to do is trying to just convert that to a research person that I could utilize at least to get some of that, financial, budgetary legwork done so that we can, go find this out, bring me back that information, we'll put it all together and, kind of, it's almost like, you got to have somebody to delegate things to. Otherwise, you've got to do it all, and then you don't have time to do the other things. So I find myself hearing from my employee recognition committee that they're trying to work on how to get me out of my office into the departments more. I'd love to do that. I'd love to take a afternoon off and go walking around. But there isn't an afternoon available because I'm constantly working at the desk and working, from meeting to meeting.
Commissioner Crawford.
What I'm hearing you say is that really you would like a deputy administrator.
That's what I'm saying.
But what you'll settle for is someone called a management and budget analyst to get you caught up, sort of. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering about,
Yeah,
as
that's
Commissioner
right.
Kropa said, 1.5 FTEs to get you caught up, when what you really want and what you really need, and what I hear you say you really need, and others have said, you have too many direct reports. You should be out at the health department of an afternoon, and should be at the sheriff's department of an afternoon, and you should be able to do those things I lost myself, but you need, you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
If I hear you trying to put a Band-Aid on something that we would be more interested in permanently fixing,
There we go.
rather than temporarily getting you caught up and feeling better about things. You need to be doing other things. It's my opinion.
Any other comments? Dr. Johnson, you raised your hand first.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm getting clear now, because I'm getting... So, you're suggesting, which I agree with then, if to more go along the lines of the deputy director.
I would suggest looking at budgeting for outcomes and county structure and see what their recommendation is.
Also, along those lines, for that results-based accounting, I've done some more research on that, and that's going to be costly to implement. I mean, we've got to look at it. It's going to be costly to implement, and it's not going to be a fit for every department. So we really won't know until we get into it what it's going to affect, and it could be a long-range plan also. It's going to be hard to go across the board with some of this stuff. So I guess I'm just trying to clarify, because like I said, I would rather see if you feel like a deputy director is needed, I'd rather see that. But I don't want to not do anything also. So.
Okay. Commissioner Wheelock, you're next.
I guess my comments, I do definitely believe that we will come to a time that a deputy administrator is going to happen. I do believe that, David's recommendation here is probably a Band-Aid, but I think it will certainly help our current situation. One thing that all of us have to remember when we go into the administration office, Chris Kramer is not a part of the administrative office. She sits there and she runs around, she answers the telephone there. But the fact is, she is not part of the administrative staff. She is our staff. If this Board of Commissioners deems that Chris's position needs to be reevaluated, it is this board's responsibility to make that determination. And it's not David's responsibility to make that determination, although he does oversee all county staff. But the fact is she is not part of the administrative staff, she's part of the Board of Commissioners staff. So it's our responsibility to talk about a reclassification or a change in the status of Chris's job. Okay. I do believe that, some of this research that needs to be done and putting together of information that is outlined in David's proposal can be done by someone that he can hire relatively easy. It is a new position, but someone that's research-based can put together this information that will help. My other point would simply be when the county clerk came and asked to reorganize her office, when the county prosecutor came to reorganize his office, we, the Board of Commissioners, did not micromanage that and tell him how to do that. We took their recommendation. We have in front of us a recommendation by the county administrator on how to reorganize his organization and his office at this point. I think it's appropriate that we support that request.
Council just said to me that it might be better to postpone this and do it under another venue, another committee. Which committee did you suggest?
If you want to just postpone it off to Ways and Means next month, or
Yeah.
Why?
just based on the comments that I was hearing, and I told Dave this, and it sounds like just listening to the comments that the board wants more information, wants to consider alternatives. It's really up to you which way you want to handle this, but
I mean, I had the numbers developed for deputy director, and the numbers developed, and it came out to 75,000 plus to do this.
Would you
that
be
way.
comfortable if we postponed it?
I mean, I needed to throw it out there because I'm getting to the point where my staff is really starting to grouse about the weight of the workload, and I'm starting to find myself, I'm running into myself walking out the door.
You mean the S on your chest is getting smaller?
The bruise on his forehead from hitting his face on the
That's right.
computer is getting bigger.
Okay, Commissioner Max Bauer.
One thing I do not want to, I don't mind postponing most of the discussion to next month, but one thing I do not want to postpone is an increase for Sarah.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. So I don't know if we proceed to, the Robert's Rules of Order.
you haven't stated the motion yet. So.
Oh, yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah,
All right.
motion was stated, it's been second, we're discussing
Motion
now.
was to approve the recommendation of the county administrator and reorganization of his office. I think Lana's probably got it written down over there better.
It was the stated recommendation.
You made the motion, it was seconded.
He hasn't stated
He
it.
hasn't stated it.
No.
Oh, I gotta state it.
So it can be
Okay.
friendly, it could be, if you want a friendly, you can do it a couple different ways. I think the easiest would be a friendly amendment at this point to maybe just focus on the reclassification. Another way is you can divide the question, you can separate this, vote on one, vote on the other. And again, the third would probably be just postpone it, bring it back at another board meeting. But it sounds like you don't want to do that either. So.
Withdraw motions, make another one.
Yeah, you could also meet.
We could table it.
Withdraw
No, why
motions
don't
and
you
make
just-
another one.
Now, if you were gonna do that, the simple thing to do is to withdraw the motion.
Yeah.
If that's the, the head rattling consensus that I'm hearing, the simple thing to do is to withdraw the motion.
Are you willing to do that?
I do want to say to you, though, that this wasn't micromanaging. This was letting our administrator know that he has more options. Had he not written that first paragraph, I wouldn't have said that. Was this of interest to you that I mentioned this, or would you rather?
No, that's fine.
I mean, this wasn't a micromanagement. It's not like when Bob came forward with a structured analysis, or Bonnie. This was someone saying, I really want something, but I can't get it, so here I'm throwing this out. I believe
That's what I'm doing.
it is a disservice of a county commissioner to their county administrator to not say, wait a minute, we have things going on, there's other options. So the word micromanaging is almost insulting in that case, because I think that's our job.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I will withdraw the motion.
okay, does that end it?
There's a second.
Well, you
The
gotta
second withdraw it?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
The second wishes to make a motion.
Don't we have to vote on that, or no? It's done?
No, it's done.
Okay, good.
No, the other page, thank you.
All right.
No, the second, I would
Gotcha.
like to make a motion to authorize the administrator to eliminate is it Secretary Grade D? And create the Central Services Coordinator Grade F. Is that it, Dave?
Yep.
I will second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
I would like to make another motion,
Yes, ma'am.
that we have the administrator come back at the next Ways and Means with some numbers and some job duties and things that would cover a deputy administrator.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Support.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought again. I just had a comment that, let me think of it again. As far as legacy planning is what I call it. I'm working with a couple of other groups, knowing that people move on. Dave is not always going to be with us. And having a deputy to be able to step in the case that he should like to retire, you do have to plan for, there's always a president and a vice president and there's always, there should be some legacy planning there as far as someone that would be able to, at least temporarily, take over for Dave in case we should unfortunately not have his services. That was my other comment.
So we'll always be Dave.
Well, be realistic
Okay,
now.
so we have a motion and a second, and we voted on it already, so
No,
that's done.
no, we need to vote. That was
Haven't?
just discussion.
Okay, motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Yes, ma'am.
to direct our administrator to work with HR on coming back with a suggestion for reclassifying Chris Kramer's position.
Is there a second to that?
Support.
Okay, motion second to reclassify, to look into reclassify.
I don't know her current job, so I'm sorry, it's the mom.
Any
Whatever
discussion on
Chris
that?
does, everything.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that, just trying to be politically correct here, which I'm not very good at, but we should talk about this reclassification would be of the County Board of Commissioners Administrative Secretary, not by name, because
Correct.
we're not changing.
That's why I just
the
caveated it by saying I
individual.
don't know the name.
We need to talk about the Board of Commissioners Administrative Secretary.
Which is what I
Not by an
said,
individual.
That's amenable.
That's
Okay,
what I
so
said.
there's been a motion for that?
My motion
And
said
a
whatever her position is, I don't know it, maybe he
Okay.
didn't hear me say that, so it
All right.
doesn't need to be amended
second.
because I stated the
Any more
motion.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As long as we're on the subject, we have to figure out how to pay for this. And the question that I have for the board is, do we want to ask our finance director, or do we want to wait until we do hear from Mr. Muha and have our strategic planning session and set our priorities, because something's going to have to come off the list that we presently fund in order to do this?
If I could, the $3,400 can be funded from our contingency fund.
Actually, it's Central Services Fund, so
Central
it's-
Services
Well,
Fund.
be funded.
I'm not
So
talking,
we're
I'm
covered
talking
for
about
this.
deputy administrator. I mean,
Well,
that's,
let's find out what kind of numbers we're talking about, and then we can determine whether or not we're going to use contingency monies for that, or if we're going to look for someplace else to deal with it.
all right,
Are you happy with that?
I am,
Okay.
for now.
Did we ever settle on the date for Mr. Muha? There was a conflict with, I
20th
believe,
of
Dave,
March?
your schedule.
No, I'm good. 20th of March.
So it is the date that we, okay.
March
Thank you.
20th.
Do we know what time?
10 a.m.?
I believe it was 10 or 1, I believe. I didn't put it
Is that
in
a
because we
Wednesday?
had it up in the air.
that was a
if I believe I
Friday.
remember right.
Friday.
This
10
is
a.m.
what, March, what day?
March 20th. It's a
20th, Friday the 20th.
At 10 a.m.? Does
I
everyone
have it
know?
down at
That's
10
what I'm
a.m.
saying.
Okay,
Okay, I'm saying out loud, March 20th at
10 a.m., Mr. Muha.
Which is a Friday for Mr. Muha. Okay,
Okay, thank you for the clarification there.
all right. Are we done with reorganization? Well, that's postponed. And then the next thing on the agenda is the soil erosion update by Mr. Enda.
Soil erosion, interestingly enough, I just got a, Bruce Ramey forwarded a a message from Justin Bragg from the state, who, let's see if I can find that. Well, the upshot of it was that he says that we should have a full-time, at least one full-time soil erosion inspector on staff, and that he doesn't know exactly how much, but he mentioned something about a compliance audit, if we needed to know for sure. And you want to say anything about that? But, you know, the fact of the matter is Pete Bruschi is retiring at the end of this month, and we kind of need to know what we're doing, whether we're going to be hiring someone or whether we're going to be contracting for all this. And we can't really, I mean, we can wait, but it's going to cost the builders in time and maybe you ought to.
Dave's right. I did get a phone call from Justin Bragg yesterday because he was aware that Pete Bruschi was retiring on the 27th of this month. The email that was sent to me today was a follow-up for the phone call. The DEQ is concerned about staffing the department, meeting the requirements for Part 91. With Pete leaving on the 27th, that gives, we would have one part-time inspector. That is not enough to do what we need to do with the building season coming up right around the corner. Even if Gwen becomes a full-time inspector, we will still need a backup, just like Commissioner Crawford said. If Gwen decided to quit or got sick or went on vacation, we need a backup. I'm not really in favor of 2 part-time inspectors, but it does work. When one leaves, we do have a backup. I would prefer to see 1 full-time inspector and 1 part-time seasonal. I think that's what Justin Bragg was hinting to, and they can come in and do an audit. They can look at what we're doing, and they can determine how our staffing needs to be. That's what the email was about.
Yeah, it's a veiled threat is what it is.
Okay, Commissioner Maxbauer.
Why can't you cross-train one of your building inspectors?
We can cross-train to do the inspection part, but to have a full-time building inspector, which our building inspectors right now are overloaded. You have to remember, we were a department of 20 people. Mm-hmm. We're down to 10. Mm-hmm. Now the construction code industry is gaining, now we're looking for people to help. To have a full-time building inspector do the full responsibilities of soil erosion inspector, it's not feasible. To do the inspections, when they're out in the field doing a building, say they're doing a building inspection, they can do the soil erosion inspection, but to expect a building inspector to do plan reviews and do customer service at the counter, we can't. You need a soil erosion person there.
Anybody else? Doctor?
So did we have anybody then bid on this soil erosion?
No, we didn't.
No, okay. I think we need to put this thing to bed next meeting, personally. I think we need to address this one way or the other, because the citizens of the county are going to suffer if we don't determine what we're going to do. I mean, I'm still leaning towards looking at the fees. I think there'd be a lot of issues with combining the two, into one department right now. So I think we definitely need to get that on our agenda for our next meeting at the end of the month, so we can maybe address this. So.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we authorize staff to advertise for the position of a soil erosion inspector. The advertising and the collection of applications by itself is going to take us until the 27th when Pete moves or retires. I think we need to at least have that piece underway. I absolutely agree with you that we need to get this thing done. I think the proposals, the ABC thing that Bruce gave to us last month are certainly viable options, but under any circumstances whatsoever, if we even think there's a possibility we're going to continue to do this in-house, and personally I think we have to do it in-house because I don't foresee wanting to get out of the building inspection business. And what we heard tonight is one doesn't happen without the other. So I think that I personally think the most important piece is to get moving forward immediately with the advertising and receiving applications for a soil erosion inspector.
So you made a motion for that?
I made a motion to direct staff to...
Part-time or full-time?
Dr. Johnson seconds it. Any more discussion?
Doesn't matter.
No,
Well, whether the question's asked of me if that's a part-time position or a full-time inspection. I think, at this point, you've put the application out there, whether or not it's a full-time or a part-time, or put it full-time / part-time for the application process. We may find someone that's interested in making it a full-time, but see what kind of applications we get.
yeah, because it doesn't, commit us.
Yeah.
We can get the process,
We
we
can get the
need to get the
application.
process going, so.
So anybody could apply for that, right, in the county? So there's a motion, there's a second. Any more discussion?
Is there a second?
Yes.
I'm not going to support the motion for two reasons. Number one, I'm certainly not, we're already donating $30,000 to $50,000 annually to soil erosion inspections, which I can't say it enough. I don't think that we ought to be paying for I support the Meyer project. I don't want to pay for their soil erosion work. I support the Hotel Indigo. I don't want to pay for their soil erosion work. I don't think we ought to be hiring until we get the fees settled. That being said, I think we need to take a serious look at outsourcing construction and soil erosion. It seems to be working very, very, very well in other municipalities, and taxpayers are saving money. It's done more efficiently. So I will be voting no, but I'm 1-7.
Anybody else? Okay, I can make a comment. I agree with you on this. I think that we've heard from Mr. Gale. He's a viable option. If not him, we can do it like he does and cross-train people, so that when soil erosion shrinks in the winter and expands in the summer, we've got options. If he can do it, he can do it. So I'm not going to be supporting this motion either. I think it was better the way we had it in the beginning. So go ahead.
I just think that Mr. Brusky's leaving changes our time frame a little bit. I still think we have all of these options available to us to change how we do things, but I don't think that we should penalize the public and the builders and things who will be needing these services, as hopefully our snow will be melting, please. So I think that you still need to staff the department that we have existing.
Well, we're obligated by Part 91. We have to.
Before we, and we can still look at ways of
Sure.
restructuring it, but you can't just not replace that valuable person, at least in some way, because then the builders, things are going to get backed up, and things aren't going to get done, and things are going to literally fall or flow through the cracks, and it's not going to work. So I wouldn't advocate waiting on filling the position in some way.
The last few months and the last few meetings, the HBA is a great supporter, and these are people we regulate. So for them to come here and say they support what we're doing, they support the fee increase, that speaks volumes for the county and for our department. What more can you say about that?
Well, if we can provide the same service for a lot less money to our citizens, if that's true, then that's what I have to say about that. So, and if we can manage things better with cross-training like he does, I like that idea. I agree with what you say, that but you got to realize we may hire this person and then in a year cross-train, or in a year use Bert.
That's
So,
possible.
Okay,
But
as long as
but
we're
I still-
willing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, all the options are still out there, but But we still need to serve the public that we're serving with what we're supposed to do here.
Okay, so we've got a motion, okay, more comment, go ahead.
One of the biggest complaints about government is inconsistency. And we just sat here and discussed how we need to take our time and look at the structure of our departments and all of that stuff, but not at the detriment to either the citizens or the staff. Right now, we have a part-time, two part-time?
Well,
One. We need to at least maintain that while we do the due diligence of looking at the restructuring. I would support seeking an application to fill exactly what we have right now, which is a part-time person that's leaving. Am I correct?
Yes.
Mr. Brusky? Okay. That just keeps us at status quo for our citizens so nobody falls behind. But in no way is that fixing this. And we're still going to look at the structure. However, I won't in any way vote on it if it isn't coupled with a dramatic fee increase in the soil erosion. This is a no-brainer. I don't even know why this wasn't done last meeting. I started reading through the minutes going, why didn't I vote to make the fee increase? I don't even remember because I think we got so inundated with the discussion of the structure. The fee increase is a no-brainer. It should be done immediately. We should look to seek to fill a position that is just keeping us where we are right now. Then make sure everybody gets their permits and things go as hopefully the thaw comes. And then we really do need to be consistent in our approach that each department deserves to be the most efficient that it can be and provide the best product. Carol is correct. With Mr. Brusky's retirement, our timeline changed. Of course, it didn't change for the fee increase, should have happened. But our timeline changed for that. I can see supporting a motion to seek out applicants for a part-time soil erosion inspector. And if that does pass, I will immediately make a motion to approve the fee increase.
Okay, are you willing to make a friendly amendment?
I will amend the motion to make the position part-time.
Okay, and the
Okay.
second person, who seconded that?
I did.
Okay, is that all right with you?
Yes.
Okay, do we have to vote on that?
Add some fees.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that's passed then. This is going to be a part-time application.
Mr. Chairman, I would move forward with the proposal B, the increase of fees combined with the restructure of inspectors' hours as outlined by the construction code administrator at our, I believe it was our last meeting. I don't have it dated, I just have the sheet, so. He had A, B's, and C's, and proposal B was the outline of the increased fee combined with the restructuring of inspector hours.
Is there a second to that? Dr.
Support.
Johnson? Okay, discussion, yes.
Bruce needs to fill us in on, was that the one that allowed for seasonal
Yes.
differences?
This is one right here.
Okay. And if we were to hire somebody, say immediately, to fill in Mr. Brusky, that was the labor that was used in determining the difference in the scheduling that you proposed in B?
yes.
Okay, so that keeps everything at status quo until we, okay.
Is there any more discussion? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Can somebody
reduces in a way.
tell me what meeting that those proposals came out of? Because I would like to look at them again.
Soil erosion was RMNA, I
I have
believe.
it right here, Carol.
Oh, all right. I just need something
It
to
has
look
the
at.
fee increase. It says the inspector's hours currently two part-time inspectors, scheduled 37.5 hours will be combined. We're going to reduce the inspector hours 180 during the months of December, January, and February, and increase the inspector's hours 180 as needed the months April through October.
Okay, that was the one I
was the
liked.
one
I
that
just
I
wanted
think
to
we
make
all
sure
liked.
that it was
For the life
one
of me,
that
I don't
thought of.
remember why I didn't vote to pass that night, so apology.
We got all caught up in a whole lot of other discussion and
Okay.
didn't move forward with what was in front of us.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I have something to ask Bruce. The, on Part B, I don't have it in front of me, I did read it. I'm in favor of having it shrink when it shrinks, and going back to what it was, but I'm not in favor of having it shrink when it shrinks than to have you get bigger later without our permission.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
is B, it shrinks when it shrinks,
Yes.
and then it gets as big as it was in the summer. Doesn't get bigger unless we need it.
Right, exactly.
No, it says
And then
it's
the decision
reduced.
will be whose? Ours?
Well, my boss is Dave Benda.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm asking the board then.
The outline or the recommendation at the time was that to reduce the inspector's hours 180 during the months of December, January, and February, and increase the inspector's hours 180 hours as needed through the months of April through October.
Okay, so
That's the way it was
So
on the
spelled out.
proposal.
the C
C
option
was an increase.
allowed them to
C was
increase
an
even
increase,
beyond
yeah.
that.
No,
And that's
I don't
the,
want
okay,
that.
that's what I want to make.
B
I
was
wanna
the
make
one
that
we
clear.
liked.
Okay.
B is neutral.
Doctor?
Well, and, I mean, to go along those lines, we also need to be able to, if they start getting busy enough where they need to either make this gentleman full-time or add another part-time, we need to,
What,
you know,
but
at that point
they're gonna
address.
come back and tell us that, and they're gonna tell us what our
So
funding
that,
source is.
hopefully that would happen. That means we're getting more tax base
That's
built
right.
in. So
That's
I'm
right.
Everly optimistic.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We've discussed it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, it passes.
Thank you, Bruce.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Let's see. Now we've got second public comment. Nick, come on up.
Nick Agustinelli, Traverse City, Michigan, Lake Drive. I'd like to speak on a couple things briefly. Number one, thank you very much for keeping soil erosion as it is. As a builder, developer, we can live with that increase, and keeping everything local, I feel, is better. With regards to the conversation earlier about the money savings from construction code if it was outsourced, I have 3 jobs going right now where I pulled the permits in 14, but you're doing the inspections in 15. So I think that, you know, the thing about all that excess money isn't excess money that's sitting there. It's not overtaxation. It's funds that haven't been spent yet. So I don't see a cost savings by outsourcing construction code. I think if you sit down and do an analysis of it and find out how many dollars were spent in 14 for work that's going to do in 15, I think you're probably going to find the majority of that surplus is there. So I just don't see that cost savings. Number 3, I have 3 contracts to start. One on Island Lake, one out on Maple City Road in Leelanau County, and one in Benzie County. So if we wait a few months and talk, you know, I'll tell you what the difference is between the 2 jurisdictions, and is outsourcing good or not. And you'll have someone with first-hand experience who's going to start 3 jobs at the same time in 3 counties. So, and I hope we're still having our ad hoc committee to discuss.
We are. Before you leave, I need your email address.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public comment. Don't be shy. Okay, then we're going to close public comment, and we've got Commissioner Committee reports.
I went to my first Networks, thank you, Nick, Networks Northwest meeting, and it was, you know, you learn what's going on in other counties. Apparently, and I can't remember who was telling me this story, but there's a county that started doing flyover GIS type pictures, and they found a house that they didn't know was there, and it was a big one. No permits had ever been, I thought, as long as we were talking, no permit had ever been pulled. No one knew it was there. It was way back in the woods, real long driveway, a magnificent home. So I just thought I'd share that.
Fantastic. Okay, notices and announcements. Yes.
It's not really an announcement or a notice, it's a comment, and I wanted to say before Greg leaves, that on Saturday, as I was trapped in Acme, unable to really get any further than the entrance to my neighborhood. We didn't have anything to do, and we listened to the police scanner or the central dispatch scanner. They do an awesome job of keeping everything straight, knowing where everybody was, what was needed to help the situation. There was no panic, there was no, it was reassuring to know that they took great care in making sure everybody was okay, everybody knew what was happening, everybody knew not to go out. The 911 Facebook page kept us updated constantly, because we were constantly looking as, can we leave yet? Can we leave yet? And we never did.
You never could.
No, I never could, not till Sunday, and then we saw pieces of cars laying around and evidence of the mayhem. But there was no evidence of the mayhem that I heard from Central Dispatch as we listened. It was very, very interesting. So great job on
Yeah.
that almost horrible disaster.
I'll be sure to pass that on to Jamel and Jason.
Thank you, thank you.
I tell my patients, they better be good, because I'll know it. If they're not, I listen to the police scanner.
Well, just to comment on that, the reason Greg is here is I wanted to thank everyone in our emergency services department. I do live with somebody that is in emergency services, therefore I hear my son's scanner going all the time, and I knew exactly what was going on. I was in the hospital that morning seeing what was going on firsthand as a patient, not as, but I contacted Greg when I got home and asked him, what can we do? And the answer was fascinating. The answer was nothing. That's why we're going to look at an agenda item. We discussed it at LPT yesterday to help our emergency services people. Greg was the guy home coordinating. Central Dispatch is awesome. They're one piece of it. Sheriff's Department, North Flight, all of the different fire departments, the state police, the city police, the health department, everybody was involved in what was going on Saturday. The coordination is massive. And anything that the Board of Commissioners can do. We had an event that wasn't long in duration and luckily had no significant injuries or deaths, but next time we might not be so lucky. And if we can preemptively help our emergency services department, I told them yesterday at the LPT with all the chiefs in the room and all of that, I said, you have a Board of Commissioners that is pro-public safety and wants to help. So Greg is going to work on looking at what we can do to have some sort of snow plans and hopefully help legislatively with that. So that's why Greg was here today. And I asked him for the stats, but he was nice enough to come read them. And everybody should know Greg, if you don't, and what he does for our county, because it's amazing.
Thank you. Any more notices, announcements? Is there a need for a closed session?
No, there is not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.